A millionaire saw a mother crying in the rain with her twins ... and that moment changed his life. The rain hammered against the hospital windows with relentless fury, masking the sound of Amanda Mitchell's racing heartbeat as she clutched her newborn twins to her chest. The sterile corridors of Seattle Grace Hospital, usually bustling with activity, were eerily quiet at 3 a.m., save for the distant echo of footsteps growing closer. "They're coming for your babies." Amanda Sarah Mitchell's voice trembled as she helped her adopted daughter into a hospital gown. "I can't stop them anymore. The board members, the officials, they're all involved. You have to run, now." Amanda's world spun as she processed her adoptive mother's words. Just hours after giving birth, she was facing her worst nightmare. The twins, Lucas and Logan, stirred against her, their tiny faces peaceful despite the chaos erupting around them. "But Mom, I don't understand," Amanda whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Why would they?" "There's no time," Sarah interrupted, pressing a set of car keys into Amanda's palm. "Take the service elevator to the basement. My car is parked near the emergency exit. Don't trust anyone, not even the police." The sound of voices grew louder, accompanied by the sharp click of expensive shoes against linoleum. Amanda recognized one of them, Dr. Henderson, the hospital board chairman, his usual smooth tone now harsh with urgency. "Find them. The adoption papers are already signed. Those babies are worth millions to the right buyers." Sarah pushed Amanda toward the service door, her eyes wild with fear and determination. "Run, sweetheart. I'll hold them off. Remember what I taught you, sometimes the only way to fight injustice is to break the rules." Amanda hesitated for a split second, her heart breaking as she realized this might be the last time she saw her adoptive mother. "I love you, Mom." "Go," Sarah commanded, just as the main door burst open. Amanda slipped through the service entrance, her bare feet silent against the cold floor as she cradled her sons. The twins, as if sensing the gravity of the situation, remained remarkably quiet. Behind her, she heard Sarah's voice, strong and defiant. "You'll have to go through me first." Then came the sound that would haunt Amanda's nightmares, a muffled struggle, a sharp cry, and silence. Thunder crashed outside as Amanda reached the basement, her hospital gown soaked with sweat and tears. As she pushed through the emergency exit into the pouring rain, alarms began blaring throughout the building. In the distance, police sirens wailed. Amanda Mitchell, former NICU nurse turned fugitive, disappeared into the stormy night with her newborn sons, unaware that this was just the beginning of a fight that would expose Seattle's darkest secrets and change lives forever. If this gripping opening scene touched something deep within your soul, join our storytelling family. Every subscription fuels our passion to craft more emotional journeys that explore the depths of human courage, love, and triumph against darkness. Your support matters. Thunder rolled across Seattle's skyline as Amanda Mitchell sat in Adam Shelton's study, her hands trembling around a cup of tea, preparing to share the story that had led her to this desperate night. The twins, Lucas and Logan, slept peacefully in a makeshift bassinet nearby, unaware of the weight of their mother's past. Amanda's story began in Seattle's St. Catherine's Orphanage, where she spent her early years after being abandoned as an infant. The orphanage, with its cold stone walls and strict routines, taught her early lessons about survival and loneliness. It was there that Sarah Mitchell, then a young doctor, found her during a routine medical check of the children. Unlike the others who saw Amanda as just another case number, Sarah noticed the fierce determination in the little girl's eyes. Sarah's decision to adopt Amanda changed both their lives. Under Sarah's care, Amanda flourished, her natural intelligence and compassion finding direction in medicine. Following in her adoptive mother's footsteps, she pursued nursing, specializing in neonatal care. The NICU at Seattle Grace Hospital became her sanctuary, a place where she could protect the most vulnerable. But the sanctuary began to crack 3 years ago. Working night shifts, Amanda noticed patterns that disturbed her babies disappearing without proper documentation, mothers being pressured into adoptions, and records that didn't quite add up. When she brought her concerns to the hospital administration, she was met with reassurances that felt hollow. One night changed everything. Amanda discovered a locked file room filled with falsified adoption papers, each representing a baby taken from a vulnerable mother. The names on those documents belonged to some of Seattle's most prominent families, politicians and business leaders. What started as suspicion became a horrifying revelation. Seattle Grace Hospital was the center of a sophisticated child trafficking operation. Her attempts to gather evidence were noticed. First came the subtle warning schedule changes, patient complaints that seemed manufactured, and colleagues who suddenly became distant. Then the threats escalated. Her apartment was broken into, her phone tapped, and anonymous notes appeared warning her to stay silent. Sarah, by then the hospital's director, tried to protect her daughter while working to expose the truth from within. But the corruption ran deeper than either of them imagined, reaching into law enforcement, the courts and city hall. The more they discovered, the more dangerous their position became. When Amanda learned she was pregnant with twins, everything changed. The same system she had been fighting now had a personal target. Her pregnancy was closely monitored by hospital staff, each checkup feeling more like surveillance than care. Sarah discovered plans to take the twins immediately after birth, using Amanda's single status and mental instability as justification. The final weeks of her pregnancy became a careful game of deception. Amanda pretended to accept the hospital's increased oversight, while Sarah quietly prepared their escape. They gathered evidence, made contingency plans, and waited for the right moment. But neither of them anticipated how quickly things would unravel after the twins' birth. Now, sitting in Adam Shelton's study, Amanda fought back tears as she remembered her last sight of Sarah standing between her and her pursuers. The sound of protest had been replaced by that terrible silence. Her mother had sacrificed everything to give her a chance to escape, and Amanda carried not only the weight of her son's safety, but also the responsibility to expose the truth her mother had died protecting. The rain continued to fall outside, matching the tears that finally broke free as Amanda finished her story. What she didn't know yet was that her path to justice would uncover more than just hospital corruption. It would reveal family secrets, lost connections, and a love she never expected to find. Her past had shaped her into a fighter, but the battle ahead would require more than just her own strength. It would take a family, both blood and chosen, to bring down the powerful forces that threatened everything she held dear. Looking at her sleeping twins, Amanda silently renewed the promise she'd made as she fled into the rainy night. No matter what it took, she would protect her children and expose the truth, even if it meant challenging the entire power structure of Seattle. What she didn't realize was that her story had already set in motion events that would shake the city's foundations and change lives forever. Adam Shelton stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching Seattle's rain-slicked skyline as memories of the past clouded his vision. His success story adorned business magazines, the self-made billionaire who built Shelton Enterprises from nothing. But what those glossy pages never captured was the cost of his empire, a price paid in something far more precious than money. 5 years ago, his world revolved around more than just business deals and board meetings. His wife, Catherine, was expecting their first child, and for the first time in his life, Adam felt complete. The nursery was painted in soft yellows and greens, filled with carefully chosen furniture and toys. But their dreams shattered in the sterile corridors of Seattle Grace Hospital. The official report cited complications during delivery, a tragedy that nobody could have prevented, but something about that night never sat right with Adam. Catherine's sudden deterioration, the missing medical records, the staff's rehearsed sympathies, it all felt orchestrated. When he pushed for answers, he encountered a wall of bureaucratic silence and legal threats. Catherine never recovered from the loss. Their marriage crumbled under the weight of unspoken grief and unanswered questions. She left Seattle, leaving Adam alone with his growing empire and a nursery he couldn't bear to dismantle. He threw himself into work, building Shelton Enterprises into a corporate giant, using his power and resources to quietly investigate the hospital. Over the years, Adam uncovered disturbing patterns. Other families had lost children under similar circumstances, all at Seattle Grace, all involving wealthy or influential parents. But every lead he followed disappeared into a maze of falsified records and dead ends. His own investigators kept hitting roadblocks, some even backing away from the case without explanation. The breakthrough came through his executive assistant, Caleb, whose own mysterious past seemed somehow connected to the hospital. Together they began mapping connections between hospital board members, adoption agencies, and some of Seattle's most powerful families. The picture that emerged suggested something far more sinister than medical malpractice. Adam's investigation led him to create a network of safe houses and resources for families who might need protection. He never expected to use them until the night he found Amanda and her twins in the rain. Something about her desperation and fierce determination to protect her children struck a chord deep within him, awakening feelings he'd thought long buried. Now, watching Amanda with her twins, Adam felt the walls he'd built around his heart beginning to crack. Her story validated years of suspicions, but it also offered something he hadn't expected: a chance at redemption, at protecting the family he couldn't save before. The business titan who'd learned to trust no one found himself opening his home and his heart to a woman on the run. But Adam harbored his own secrets. His company's early growth had been funded by some of the same people now implicated in the hospital's dark operations. Unknowingly, he might have contributed to the very system that destroyed his family. This revelation tormented him, adding a personal stake to his quest for justice. Behind his composed exterior, Adam wrestled with guilt and responsibility. Every business decision he'd made, every connection he'd cultivated, now needed to be re-examined. The empire he'd built might become both a weapon and a liability in the fight ahead. Yet watching Amanda with her sons awakened something else, a fierce protectiveness he thought he'd lost forever. As the rain continued to fall outside his office window, Adam made a silent vow. He would use every resource, every connection, every bit of power he'd accumulated to protect Amanda and her children. This time he wouldn't fail. This time he would fight the corruption that had taken everything from him, even if it meant dismantling his own empire in the process. What Adam didn't realize was that his decision to help Amanda would uncover truths about his own past that would shake the foundations of everything he believed. The path to justice would require more than just his wealth and influence. It would demand that he open himself to the possibility of love and family once again, risking his heart in ways he never thought possible. Caleb Mitchell stood in Adam's study, his trained investigator's eyes taking in every detail while his mind wrestled with a past he'd spent years trying to forget. As Adam's head of security and closest confidant, he'd built a new life far removed from his days as a Seattle PD detective. But Amanda's appearance had shattered the careful walls he'd constructed around his memories. 20 years ago, Caleb had been forced to leave his family behind. His undercover work investigating police corruption had put them at risk, and his handlers gave him an impossible choice: disappear completely or watch his loved ones become targets. He chose their safety over his presence, never knowing that his departure would coincide with a tragic accident that would tear his family apart. By the time he could safely return, his parents were dead, and his little sister Amanda had vanished into the foster care system. Nicole Hart's polished exterior as Seattle's top defense attorney masked her own complicated relationship with justice. Unknown to her colleagues and clients, she was the daughter of Richard Hart, the man whose corruption investigation had forced Caleb to disappear. Her father's role in destroying families like Caleb's had driven her to become a force for justice, working to expose the very system her father had helped build. The tension between Caleb and Nicole was immediate and electric. Each recognized in the other a shared commitment to justice, but their complicated history created an undercurrent of distrust. Nicole's determination to right her father's wrongs matched Caleb's need to protect the sister he'd only just found, creating an alliance as volatile as it was necessary. Sarah Mitchell, Amanda's adoptive mother and hospital director, carried the heaviest burden of all. Her position had allowed her to witness the corruption firsthand, but it also forced her to play a dangerous game of compliance while secretly gathering evidence. Every child lost to the trafficking ring weighed on her conscience, even as she worked to dismantle the system from within. The relationship between Sarah and Amanda was complex. Sarah's decision to adopt Amanda had been partly driven by guilt. She had been present for other forced adoptions but had remained silent. Amanda's presence in her life became both redemption and reminder, pushing her to finally take action against the corruption she'd witnessed. Detective James Cooper, a rookie cop when Caleb disappeared, now headed the department's Special Victims Unit. His loyalty to his former partner complicated his official duties, especially as evidence began pointing to corruption within his own department. Cooper's position made him both a valuable ally and a potential threat, his true allegiance unknown even to himself. The web of relationships connecting these characters was as intricate as the conspiracy they faced. Caleb's protective instincts toward Amanda clashed with his growing attraction to Nicole, whose own past threatened to unravel their investigation. Sarah's efforts to protect her adopted daughter while maintaining her cover created tensions that tested the bonds of family loyalty. Each character brought their own wounds and motivations to the fight. Caleb's guilt over abandoning his family drove him to extreme measures to protect Amanda now. Nicole's determination to separate herself from her father's legacy led her to take risks that put her own life in danger. Sarah's past complicity fueled a desperate need for redemption that would ultimately demand the highest sacrifice. As they gathered in Adam's mansion, their individual stories began to interweave into something larger than themselves. The evidence they uncovered revealed connections none of them had suspected, forcing them to confront painful truths about their past choices and future possibilities. The rain that had brought Amanda to Adam's door that night seemed to follow them all, a constant reminder of the storms they'd weathered and the ones still to come. Their unlikely alliance of Millionaire, a former detective, a crusading lawyer, and a hospital director became both fortress and family, each member essential to protecting Amanda and her twins, while exposing the truth that threatened them all. What none of them realized was that their combined past experiences, painful as they were, had prepared them for this moment. The journey ahead would require not just their skills and resources, but their ability to trust and heal each other. In fighting for justice, they would find more than just redemption. They would discover the family each of them had longed for but never thought they'd find. Thunder cracked across the Seattle sky as Amanda huddled in the hospital records room, her hands trembling as she stared at the computer screen before her. Her world, already fragile from pregnancy complications and mounting threats, shattered completely as she read the documents illuminated by the dim emergency lights. Scheduled adoption placement for Mitchell twins buyers confirmed. Intervention protocols in place. The clinical language couldn't mask the horror of what she was reading. Listed beneath were detailed plans for declaring her an unfit mother, complete with fabricated psychological evaluations and testimony from concerned hospital staff. The deeper she dug, the worse it became. Her own medical records had been altered, creating a history of mental instability and drug use that didn't exist. Even her prenatal care notes had been modified to support their narrative. The systematic destruction of her credibility had been planned since the moment her pregnancy was confirmed. Her breath caught as she noticed a familiar name attached to the documentation. Dr. James Henderson, the same board member who had pressured her to consider voluntary adoption months ago. His signature appeared on dozens of similar cases, each involving vulnerable mothers and wealthy adoptive parents. A noise in the corridor sent her heart racing. Footsteps approached, accompanied by voices she recognized from the hospital board. Amanda quickly powered down the computer, gathering the printed evidence with shaking hands. The sound of keys jingling outside the door spurred her into action. She slipped behind a tall filing cabinet just as the door opened, holding her breath as two figures entered. Through the narrow gap, she recognized Dr. Henderson and a woman she'd never seen before, elegantly dressed despite the late hour. "Everything is prepared," Henderson was saying. "The twins will be declared at risk immediately after birth. The mother's history of instability makes it straightforward. By morning, they'll be with their new family." The woman's response chilled Amanda to her core. "Ensure there are no complications this time. The buyers are particularly interested in twins. The price reflects that." Amanda's hand instinctively went to her swollen belly, feeling her son's move beneath her palm. The reality of what she'd uncovered, that her own hospital was trafficking babies under the guise of medical necessity, made her dizzy with fear and rage. As the voices moved away, Amanda stayed frozen in place, her mind racing. She couldn't go home, they would be watching. She couldn't trust the police, the documentation showed their involvement. Her only ally was Sarah, her adoptive mother, but even reaching out to her carried risks. Using her employee access one last time, Amanda erased her final shift schedule and disabled her building access card. She gathered the evidence into her bag, along with emergency supplies from the nurse's station. Years of working nights had taught her the hospital's rhythms. She knew when the security cameras switched feeds, which exits were least monitored. In the relative safety of a supply closet, Amanda called the one person she knew she could trust. "Mom," she whispered when Sarah answered, "I found it. All of it. They're planning to take the twins." Sarah's response was immediate and controlled, belying the fear in her voice. "Listen carefully. Pack only what you absolutely need. I've been preparing for this. There's money and documents in my office safe. The combination is your adoption date." As Amanda made her way through the shadowy corridors, her nurse's uniform providing camouflage, she felt her sons moving restlessly. "Stay quiet, little ones," she murmured. "Mummy's going to keep you safe." She reached Sarah's office without incident, her hands steady now as she opened the safe. Inside she found cash, a prepaid phone, and a set of documents she didn't dare examine too closely. At the bottom was a note in Sarah's handwriting: "Trust no one. Stay strong. I love you." Tears blurred her vision as she read those words, understanding the weight of her adoptive mother's love and sacrifice. Sarah had known this day might come, had prepared for it even while maintaining her position as hospital director. The storm that had been threatening all evening finally broke as Amanda made her final preparations. Lightning illuminated the parking garage as she made her way to her car, the thunder masking the sound of her footsteps. The evidence was secured, her escape route planned, but Amanda knew this was just the beginning. As she drove away from Seattle Grace Hospital for what she thought would be the last time, Amanda couldn't know that her discovery would set in motion events that would expose decades of corruption, reunite long-lost families, and ultimately lead her to a love she never expected to find. The storm that raged around her car was nothing compared to the tempest gathering on the horizon. The rain hammered against Adam Shelton's windshield as he navigated his BMW through Seattle's deserted streets. The late-night board meeting had left him restless, his mind preoccupied with the hospital expansion proposal that felt wrong in ways he couldn't quite articulate. Years of business instincts told him something was off about Seattle Grace's numbers. He almost missed her in the downpour, a figure hunched against the storm, clutching what appeared to be bundles to her chest. His foot eased off the accelerator, security training kicking in as he assessed the situation. The woman's hospital gown, visible beneath a thin jacket, sent warning signals through his mind. For a moment he debated driving past. His investigation into the hospital had taught him the dangers of involvement, but something about her desperate stance, the protective way she held what he now realized were infants, struck a chord he thought long buried. "Security check on my location," he spoke into his car's system. a protocol Caleb had insisted upon. "I'm stopping to assist a woman with 2 infants." The response was immediate surveillance active. Backup standing by. Pulling alongside her, Adam lowered his window. Rain splattered the leather interior as he called out, "Do you need help?" The woman flinched, backing away, her arms tightening around the babies. The streetlight caught her face, young, exhausted, but with eyes that held a fierce determination he recognized. "I'm fine," she said, but her voice cracked on the words. "Please just leave us alone." A car passed slowly behind them, its headlights lingering too long. Adam noticed how she tensed, positioning herself to shield the infants from view. "You're not safe here," he said quietly, his instinct screaming that something was very wrong. "I have a secure location. Let me help." He held up his hands, showing he was unarmed, aware that every second they remained exposed increased the danger. The woman Amanda, he would later learn, seemed to wage an internal battle. Another car approached, moving deliberately slow. Adam watched her eyes track it, saw the flash of fear she tried to hide. "They're looking for you, aren't they?" Her sharp intake of breath confirmed his suspicion. The approaching car was now clearly visible, a black SUV with tinted windows. Adam made a quick decision. "Get in." Now he reached across to open the passenger door, his voice leaving no room for argument. For a heartbeat, she hesitated. Then the SUV's engine revved, and she made her choice. Moving with surprising grace for someone who had clearly just given birth, she slid into the car, protecting the babies as Adam pulled away from the curb. Through his rearview mirror, he watched the SUV fall into pursuit. "Caleb," he spoke into his phone, "I need an interference play." Black SUV, government plates, trailing us on 4th. Within moments, a series of security vehicles appeared, smoothly intercepting their pursuer. The woman sat rigid beside him, her attention divided between the sleeping infants and the road behind them. "I'm Adam Shelton," he offered, keeping his voice calm. "You're safe now. I have a secure compound where you and your children will be protected." "Why?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why would you help us?" Adam's hands tightened on the steering wheel as memories of Catherine and their lost child surfaced. "Because 5 years ago, someone should have helped my wife and daughter at that same hospital, but no one did." He felt her studying him, weighing his words against her desperate situation. The babies stirred, and her attention immediately shifted to them, checking their breathing, adjusting their blankets with practiced care. "I'm Amanda," she finally said, "and they're trying to take my sons." The simple statement carried layers of fear, rage, and determination that resonated with Adam's own unresolved grief. As they approached his estate's security gates, Adam made a silent vow. This time would be different. This time he would stop whatever darkness lurked in Seattle Grace's corridors. The woman beside him had awakened something he thought long dead, a burning need to protect, to fight back against the system that had destroyed his own family. What he couldn't know then was that this rainy night encounter would change everything. His carefully constructed world of business deals and corporate power would be upended by a young mother's courage and 2 tiny lives that would somehow begin to heal his shattered heart. The gates closed behind them as thunder rolled overhead, nature itself seeming to acknowledge that something momentous had been set in motion. In trying to save Amanda and her twins, Adam would find himself confronting not just hospital corruption, but his own past and the possibility of a future he'd never dared to imagine. The morning after Amanda's arrival, Adam's study became a command center as Caleb laid out the initial surveillance reports. Coffee cups littered the mahogany desk, evidence of their sleepless night analyzing the implications of Amanda's escape. "The SUV that followed you carried diplomatic plates," Caleb explained, spreading photographs across the desk. "But they're registered to a shell company. Same pattern we've seen before with the hospital board's activities." His fingers traced connections between images, revealing a web of suspicious coincidences. Nicole arrived minutes later, her legal briefcase bulging with documents. The tension between her and Caleb was immediate and electric, though both maintained professional facades. The adoption papers Amanda found are just the tip of the iceberg, she announced, pulling out file after file. I've traced similar cases across 3 states, all involving Seattle Grace, all with the same players. But the pattern that emerged was chilling. Vulnerable mothers, falsified medical records, and babies who disappeared into a system of high-priced private adoptions. Behind it all, a network of powerful figures whose influence reached into every corner of Seattle's establishment. They're already moving to discredit Amanda, Nicole continued, pulling up news articles on her tablet. Look at this mentally unstable nurse flees with newborns. They're painting her as dangerous, unstable. Classic character assassination. Caleb's jaw tightened as he read. They're good. The story's being picked up by every major outlet. No mention of the hospital's involvement, just concerns about the baby's safety. He paused, studying a particular document. Wait. This police report, I know this signature. James Cooper. Your old partner, Adam asked, noting how Caleb's expression darkened. Former partner. He's heading special victims now. If he's involved, Caleb left the implication hanging. Another trusted institution compromised. A soft knock interrupted them. Amanda stood in the doorway, twins sleeping peacefully in the portable bassinet beside her. The sight of her brought the conspiracy's human cost into sharp focus. But this wasn't just about documents and connections, it was about mothers and children, lives torn apart by greed and corruption. Dr. Henderson is on the morning news, she said quietly. He's calling for an investigation into criminal behavior at the hospital. They're saying I stole medical records, that I'm paranoid, delusional. Her voice cracked slightly, but her spine remained straight. Adam moved instinctively to her side, his presence steady and reassuring. Let them talk. We have evidence, and more importantly, we have the truth. Nicole nodded, already strategizing. We need to move carefully. One wrong step, and they'll bury everything under legal proceedings. These people have judges in their pockets. There's something else, Caleb interjected, holding up his phone. Sarah Mitchell hasn't been seen since last night. The hospital claims she's taking personal leave, but none of her usual contacts can reach her. Amanda's face paled. Mum, she whispered, understanding the implications. Sarah's position as hospital director had made her both powerful and vulnerable. Her absence now could mean many things, none of them good. The room fell silent save for the soft breathing of the twins. Each person present felt the weight of what they faced, a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of Seattle's power structure, willing to destroy lives to protect its secrets. They'll come for us, Amanda said finally, voicing what everyone knew. They can't afford to let this expose them. Adam's response was immediate and firm. Let them come. This house is a fortress, and everyone here is family now. We protect our own. The words hung in the air, a declaration of war against forces that had operated in shadows for too long. But even as they planned their next moves, none of them could fully grasp how personal this fight would become, or how their own pasts would collide with the present in ways that would shake their world to its foundations. Outside, Seattle's rain continued to fall, washing away traces of Amanda's escape, but unable to cleanse the city of its darker secrets. In Adam's study, an unlikely family began to form, bound not by blood, but by a shared commitment to justice and protection of the innocent. The conspiracy they faced was powerful, but they had something stronger: truth, determination, and a love that would prove more formidable than any adversary. What they didn't know yet was that their greatest challenges would come not from their enemies, but from the secrets they each carried. The conspiracy was just beginning to reveal itself, and its roots reached deeper into their own lives than any of them suspected. Tension filled Adam's mansion as its occupants adjusted to their forced coexistence. Despite the common enemy they faced, trust didn't come easily. Amanda watched everyone with wary eyes, years of nursing experience having taught her that the kindest faces often hid the darkest intentions. Your security team, she confronted Adam one evening, her voice low to avoid waking the twins. "How do you know they're not compromised?" The hospital had people everywhere. Her fingers nervously twisted the hem of her borrowed sweater, a habit that betrayed her constant anxiety. Adam's response was measured, though her distrust stung. "Every person here has been personally vetted by Caleb. Their loyalty is to me, not the hospital board." He paused, studying her face. "But you don't have to take my word for it. Trust your instincts, they've kept you alive so far." Caleb's own doubts centered on Nicole. During a late-night strategy session, he finally voiced his concerns. "Your father's name appears in too many of these documents," he said, spreading files across the table. "How do we know you're not feeding him information?" Nicole's eyes flashed with anger and hurt. "You think I don't know what my father is? Why do you think I became a lawyer?" To fix what he broke. The pain in her voice was raw, genuine. "Including what he did to your family, Caleb." The revelation hung heavy in the air. Adam watched the interplay between them, noting how Caleb's expression shifted from suspicion to confusion. "What do you mean, what he did to my family?" "Richard Hart," Nicole said quietly. "The man who ordered your disappearance. The man who arranged the accident that killed your parents." My father, her hands trembled slightly as she pulled out an old case file. "I've spent years tracking his activities, including what happened to you and Amanda." The tension in the room crackled as Caleb absorbed this information. His past, which he tried so hard to bury, was suddenly laid bare by the daughter of the man who destroyed his family. The irony of their current alliance wasn't lost on anyone. Even the household staff felt the strain of secrets and suspicion. Every delivery was scrutinized, every visitor questioned. Routine maintenance became a security operation, with Caleb personally overseeing each contractor's credentials. Adam's business partners noticed changes too. His sudden interest in hospital board politics raised eyebrows. Longtime associates found their calls screened, their meetings postponed. The isolation necessary for Amanda's protection began to affect his corporate empire. "You're risking everything," his CFO warned during a private meeting. "The board is asking questions about your connection to Seattle Grace. There are rumors." "Let them ask," Adam replied, his voice hard. The company he'd built might crumble, but he wouldn't back down. Not this time. The strain showed most clearly in Amanda. Despite her gratitude, living under constant protection chafed against her independent nature. The twins' cries echoed through the mansion at night, and though no one complained, she felt the burden of her presence weighing on everyone. One particularly difficult night, she packed a small bag, determined to stop putting others at risk. Adam found her in the nursery, preparing to leave. Their eyes met in the darkness, understanding passing between them. "You won't make it past the gate," he said softly. "Not because of security, but because everyone here would stop you. Not out of duty, but because we care." "Why?" Amanda whispered, tears threatening. "Why risk everything for us?" Adam moved closer, his usual corporate facade cracking. "Because some things are worth the risk. Some people are worth protecting, no matter the cost." The moment was interrupted by Caleb's urgent arrival. "We have a problem," he announced, holding up his phone. "Sarah's office at the hospital has been cleaned out. Every file, every record gone. And there's more. They're claiming she embezzled hospital funds, set up fake adoptions for profit." Amanda's bag dropped forgotten to the floor as this new threat registered. They were discrediting Sarah, just as they'd tried to discredit her. The pattern was familiar, but no less devastating. "They're trying to isolate us," Nicole observed, appearing in the doorway. "Cut off every ally, every source of support." Classic containment strategy. The group looked at each other, their individual doubts and suspicions temporarily overshadowed by the growing threat. They were all in too deep now, their fates intertwined whether they trusted each other or not. "Then we trust no one but ourselves," Adam declared, his decision made. "We're all we have now." The twins stirred in their sleep, their innocent faces a reminder of what was at stake. In protecting them, this unlikely group would have to move past their suspicions and learn to rely on each other. Their enemies were counting on discord and distrust to weaken them. Unity, however fragile, was their only defense. The revelation came on a quiet Sunday afternoon, when the mansion's usual tension had settled into a temporary lull. Amanda sat in the library, gently rocking Logan while Lucas slept nearby. Her sleeve had rolled up, revealing an old scar on her forearm, a small, leaf-shaped mark that caught Caleb's attention as he passed by. He froze in the doorway, memories crashing over him like waves. His voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. "That scar. Where did you get it?" Amanda glanced at her arm, then back at him, puzzled by his intensity. "It's nothing. Just an old childhood accident. I fell off my bike into some bushes when I was 6. Caleb moved closer, his professional detachment crumbling. "And someone told you it looked like a leaf to make you stop crying." The room grew still. Amanda's hands tightened protectively around Logan as she stared at Caleb. "How could you know that?" "Because I was the one who told you." Caleb's voice cracked. "I carried you home that day. You cried the whole way, but you stopped when I made up that story about the leaf mark being magical." Color drained from Amanda's face as long-buried memories surfaced. A summer day, a rusty bicycle, a teenage brother who always knew how to make things better. "Caleb," she whispered, disbelief warring with recognition. "My Caleb." He knelt beside her chair, tears gathering in his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Mandy. I never wanted to leave you. They told me if I stayed, you and Mom and Dad would be targets. I thought I was protecting you." Amanda's free hand trembled as she reached out to touch his face, confirming he was real. "They told me you abandoned us, that you chose your career over family, after the accident when Mom and Dad." Her voice broke. "I came back as soon as I could." Caleb's words tumbled out, years of guilt and pain behind them. But it was too late. The accident, the funeral, I missed it all. And you had disappeared into the system. I searched everywhere. Adam and Nicole, drawn by the emotional exchange, stood silently in the doorway. They watched as years of separation dissolved in tears and tentative touches, as brother and sister rediscovered each other. "Sarah," Amanda said suddenly. She must have known. She had access to all the records. She could have seen the connection. Caleb nodded slowly. "She protected you the way I couldn't. Gave you a home, a future." His eyes fell to the twins. "Made you strong enough to protect your own children." Logan chose that moment to wake, his tiny hand reaching out to grab Caleb's finger. The simple gesture broke something in both siblings, and Amanda found herself wrapped in her brother's embrace, careful of the baby between them. "I have nephews," Caleb marveled, looking at the twins with new eyes. "I'm an uncle." "And I have my brother back." Amanda's voice was thick with emotion. "After all this time." The reunion was bittersweet, shadowed by years of loss and separation. But as brother and sister began sharing stories, filling in the gaps of their lost years, something shifted in the mansion's atmosphere. Their individual fights merged into something stronger, a family's determination to protect its own. Nicole watched the scene with mixed emotions, understanding better than anyone the cost of family secrets. Her own father's role in separating the siblings weighed heavily on her heart. Adam observed the reunion with growing resolve. This wasn't just about protecting Amanda and the twins anymore. It was about healing a family torn apart by the very forces they now fought against. As evening fell, Caleb remained by Amanda's side, helping with the twins, making up for lost time. Their conversation flowed easier now, childhood memories serving as bridges across the years of separation. "I won't leave again," Caleb promised as Amanda prepared the twins for bed. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Amanda looked at her brother, seeing both the teenager who had protected her and the man who had never stopped searching. Together, she agreed, the word carrying the weight of a vow. The discovery of their connection added new urgency to their fight. For Caleb, the hospital's threats against his sister and nephews became intensely personal. For Amanda, having her brother's strength beside her renewed her courage to face whatever came next. But what none of them could know was that this reunion was just the first of many buried truths waiting to surface. The forces that had separated them years ago were still at work, and the fight to protect Amanda's twins would uncover even darker family secrets. The first warning came in the form of a perfectly legal document. Nicole found it on her desk one morning, buried among routine paperwork, a court order demanding Amanda submit to a psychological evaluation, citing concerns about maternal fitness. "They're not even trying to hide anymore," Nicole announced during their morning briefing. "This judge has direct ties to the hospital board. They're using the system itself against us." The threats escalated rapidly after that. Adam's company stocks mysteriously plummeted following anonymous concerns about financial irregularities. Board members who had never questioned his leadership suddenly demanded emergency meetings. "They're trying to distract us," Adam observed grimly, watching his empire face its first real crisis. "Divide our attention, force us to fight on multiple fronts." Caleb's old police contacts started going dark, one by one. Those who still spoke to him shared disturbing rumors. Internal affairs investigations suddenly reopened cold cases, officers being pressured to remember misconduct from his time on the force. Even the mansion's security was tested. Sophisticated attempts to breach their systems increased daily. Surveillance photos appeared in their mail, showing team members with their families, a clear message about vulnerability. But it was the attack on Sarah's reputation that cut deepest. Local news ran exposes about financial misconduct at the hospital during her tenure. Former patients came forward with stories of misconduct, their testimonies seemingly scripted. "Look at this," Amanda said one evening, her voice shaking as she held up a tablet. The screen showed Sarah's medical license under review, her decades of service reduced to a list of alleged violations. The pressure began affecting everyone. Security staff requested transfers, citing family concerns. Domestic workers resigned without notice. The mansion's atmosphere grew increasingly tense as their circle of trust shrank. One night, the twins' regular pediatrician called to cancel all future appointments. His voice was strained, apologetic but firm. "I'm sorry, but I can't risk my practice. They're watching everyone connected to you." Amanda found herself increasingly isolated, the outside world becoming hostile territory. Even routine errands carried risk. Strangers approached her in stores, some offering help to escape her captors, others making veiled threats about her children's safety. "They're trying to make us look like kidnappers," Caleb realized, reviewing security footage of these encounters, painting us as the ones holding you against your will. The psychological toll became evident. Amanda started having nightmares, waking in panic to check on the twins. Adam worked through nights, fighting to protect his company while maintaining their sanctuary. Caleb grew more protective, his military training surfacing in heightened security protocols. Nicole faced professional isolation as colleagues distanced themselves. Cases were mysteriously reassigned, court dates rescheduled. Her reputation, built over years of dedication, began to crumble under whispered accusations. "We need to consider what happens if they succeed," Adam said during a late-night strategy session. "If they manage to force us apart, we need contingency plans." The suggestion sparked immediate protest. "We're not separating," Caleb declared, his hand finding Amanda's. "That's what they want, to isolate us, make us vulnerable." Yet the threat's reality couldn't be ignored. They began preparing safe houses, escape routes, emergency protocols. Each plan felt like a concession to their enemies, an admission that their fortress might not hold. The twins, oblivious to the growing danger, became everyone's anchor. Their innocent laughter, first steps, and midnight feedings provided moments of normalcy in their besieged world. They reminded everyone what they were fighting for. "Sometimes I think we should just run," Amanda confessed to Adam one evening, watching the twins sleep. "Disappear somewhere they can't find us." Adam's response was immediate and fierce. Running means they win. Every family they've destroyed, every child they've taken, it all continues. We stand our ground, not just for the twins, but for everyone they've hurt. His words rallied their spirits, but the reality remained stark. Their enemies were powerful, patient, and willing to destroy lives to protect their secrets. The question wasn't if they would strike, but when and how hard. What none of them realized was that the growing threats were just a prelude. Their enemies were testing defenses, probing for weaknesses, preparing for a blow that would shake their makeshift family to its core. The transformation in Adam Shelton happened gradually, like the Seattle rain that could shift from gentle mist to raging storm without warning. For a man who had built his life around corporate acquisitions and profit margins, the presence of Amanda and the twins in his home sparked changes he never expected. It began with small things. The sound of babies crying no longer seemed intrusive but welcome, breaking the mansion's carefully maintained silence. His morning routine expanded to include checking on the twins, often finding Amanda already there, speaking softly to her sons as dawn broke over Seattle. "You're different with them," Nicole observed one morning, watching Adam naturally soothe Logan during a particularly fussy moment. "I've never seen you this human." The observation struck closer to home than Adam cared to admit. The walls he'd built after losing Catherine and their unborn daughter had begun to crack, letting in emotions he'd thought long buried. He found himself lingering in the nursery, watching Amanda with the twins. Her fierce devotion to her sons stirred something in him, not just memories of his loss, but possibilities he'd stopped believing in. "Why did you really help us that night?" Amanda asked him one evening after the twins had finally fallen asleep. "The truth this time." Adam was silent for a long moment, considering deflection but finding himself unwilling to hide behind his usual corporate facade. "Because 5 years ago I failed to protect my own family. I watched the hospital destroy everything I loved, and I did nothing but file lawsuits and demand investigations." His voice grew softer, more vulnerable than anyone had ever heard. "When I saw you in the rain, holding those babies, I realized I had a second chance. Not just to fight the hospital, but to protect a family." The admission changed something between them. Amanda began to see past the billionaire businessman to the wounded man beneath. Their conversations grew longer, more personal, extending beyond strategy sessions into shared confidences. The corporate titan who once measured everything in terms of profit and loss found himself reassessing his priorities. Board meetings that once dominated his schedule became secondary to morning feedings and afternoon naps. His executive team noticed the change. "The Adam Shelton I knew would never risk the company like this," his CFO remarked during a particularly tense meeting. "These people, they're changing you." "Maybe I needed to change," Adam replied, surprising himself with the honesty of his response. Even his view of justice shifted. Where once he might have sought legal settlements and corporate solutions, he now understood that some wounds required more than money to heal. The sight of Amanda and Caleb reuniting, of family bonds recovering from years of forced separation, taught him that true justice involved healing as much as punishment. The twins played their own role in his transformation. Lucas and Logan, with their innocent trust and unconditional affection, broke down barriers he didn't even know he still had. Their milestone moments, first smiles, first words, first steps, became more important than quarterly reports. "You're falling in love with them," Caleb stated one night, finding Adam in the nursery long after the twins had fallen asleep. It wasn't clear whether he meant just the babies or their mother as well. Adam didn't deny it. The emotional distance he'd maintained for years no longer felt like protection, but like prison walls he'd built himself. The change manifested in his leadership style as well. His company's resources, once dedicated solely to profit, were increasingly directed toward investigating corruption and protecting vulnerable families. He began establishing foundations to support single mothers, funding legal aid for custody battles. I used to think power meant controlling everything, he confided to Amanda during one of their late-night conversations. Now I realize it's about using what you have to protect what matters. The irony wasn't lost on him that in trying to protect Amanda and her sons, he had found healing for his own wounds. The mansion that had once been a monument to his success became something else entirely, a home, filled with the kind of life and love he'd convinced himself he could never have again. What Adam couldn't know was that his transformation would be tested in ways he never imagined. The forces gathering against them would demand more than just his resources. They would require him to choose between the empire he'd built and the family he'd grown to love. The attack came on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Amanda had just put the twins down for their nap when the mansion's security systems suddenly went dark. The familiar hum of surveillance equipment fell silent, plunging the house into an eerie quiet. Caleb reacted instantly, his military training taking over. "Nicole, get Amanda and the twins to the panic room." "Adam, activate the backup protocols." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the gravity of the situation. They had only moments before the first breach. The sound of breaking glass echoed from the east wing, followed by the measured footsteps of professional intruders. These weren't common criminals, their movements spoke of military precision. They cut the main power grid, Adam reported, his fingers flying over a backup terminal. But they don't know about the secondary systems. With a few keystrokes, emergency lights flickered to life, casting the mansion in an otherworldly glow. Amanda refused to be rushed to safety. "I won't hide while everyone else is in danger," she insisted, even as Nicole tried to guide her toward the panic room. "These are my children thereafter. I need to fight." The first attacker appeared at the end of the hallway, dressed in tactical gear. Caleb engaged him without hesitation, his hand-to-hand combat skills evident in the swift takedown. But more were coming. "They're trying to herd us," Nicole realized, noticing the pattern of the attack. "Force us into smaller groups, make us easier to control." Her legal mind was already analyzing the implications. This isn't just about taking the twins, they want all of us. Adam's security team fought back with practiced efficiency, but they were outnumbered. The attackers seemed to know the mansion's layout, avoiding the usual choke points and security measures. In the nursery, Amanda stood her ground as two intruders burst through the door. They hadn't expected her to fight back. The lamp she wielded made a surprisingly effective weapon, buying precious seconds for Adam to arrive. The sight of Amanda defending her children awakened something primal in Adam. His normally controlled demeanor gave way to raw fury as he engaged the attackers. Years of high-end security training merged with pure protective instinct. "Get to the twins," he shouted to Amanda between strikes. "I'll hold them here." Their eyes met briefly, volumes of unspoken feelings passing between them in that desperate moment. Throughout the mansion, the battle raged. Nicole proved surprisingly capable in combat, her expensive suits hiding martial arts training she'd never mentioned. She and Caleb fought back to back, their movements synchronized as if they'd trained together for years. The twins, remarkably, remained asleep through the chaos, their peaceful faces a stark contrast to the violence surrounding them. Amanda managed to get them into portable carriers, ready to move at a moment's notice. The tide turned when Adam's backup generators kicked in, restoring power to the security systems. Automatic lockdown protocols activated, trapping several attackers between reinforced doors. "Police are 3 minutes out," Caleb announced, checking his phone between encounters. But question is, whose police are coming? The answer became clear as sirens approached. Through the security feeds, they watched as Detective James Cooper led the response team. His face was grim, determined this wasn't the corrupted response their enemies had planned for. Caleb breathed, relief evident in his voice. He chose a side. The attackers, realizing their window was closing, began a strategic retreat. They left behind enough evidence to keep forensics teams busy for weeks: equipment, DNA traces, and most importantly, links to their employers. In the aftermath, as police secured the scene, the magnitude of what had happened began to sink in. The mansion's pristine interior bore scars of combat, blood-stained expensive carpets, broken furniture littered hallways. Amanda sat in the nursery, holding her still sleeping sons, her body trembling with delayed shock. Adam stood guard at the door, his usual impeccable appearance disheveled but his stance protective. "They'll try again," Nicole said quietly, cataloguing evidence with her phone. "This was just the first wave." Caleb nodded, his expression hardening. "Next time we'll be better prepared." He looked at his sister and nephews, then at Adam. "We protect our family, whatever it takes." The attack had changed something fundamental in their dynamic. They were no longer just allies of convenience, but a family forged in combat. Each had proven willing to risk everything to protect the others. What they didn't realize was that this attack, as violent as it was, served another purpose. Their enemies weren't just testing their defenses, they were gathering information, learning weaknesses, preparing for something far more devastating. As the sun set over the battle-scarred mansion, they began to understand that their fight was entering a new phase. The rules had changed, and survival would require more than just physical strength. It would demand sacrifices none of them were prepared to make. In the wake of the attack, Adam's study transformed into a war room. Evidence from the attempted invasion lined the walls, photographs, documents, and surveillance footage that painted a disturbing picture of their enemies' reach and resources. Nicole worked tirelessly, her legal expertise uncovering patterns that had eluded them before. The adoption records follow a specific protocol, she explained, spreading papers across Adam's desk. Each case involves a mother in a vulnerable position, single, financial troubles, or medical issues. The hospital creates problems, then offers adoption as the only solution. Caleb added his findings to the growing web of evidence. The security team that attacked us? Private military contractors, hired through a series of shell companies. He pinned more photos to the wall. But here's where it gets interesting. These same contractors appear in other cities, always around hospitals with similar adoption patterns. Detective James Cooper became their inside source, carefully feeding them information while maintaining his cover within the department. His latest report shook them all. "They're not just trafficking babies," he revealed during a clandestine meeting. "The hospital's part of an international network. These aren't just adoptions, they're sales to the highest bidders." Amanda spent hours reviewing patient files, her medical knowledge providing crucial insights. "Look at these delivery records," she pointed out. "Multiple cases where mothers were told their babies didn't survive, but there's no death certificate. Instead, there's a transfer to a special care facility that doesn't exist." The investigation led them to unexpected places. Adam's financial team traced payments through offshore accounts, linking hospital board members to luxury purchases that far exceeded their official incomes. Properties in remote locations, private islands, and high-end vehicles, all paid for with money that originated from adoption fees. Sarah's disappearance remained a haunting mystery. Security footage showed her being escorted from the hospital by men in suits, but her trail went cold after that. "She's alive," Amanda insisted, refusing to believe otherwise. "Mom's too smart to let them silence her. She must be gathering evidence." The deeper they dug, the more dangerous their position became. Nicole discovered her own father's fingerprints on key documents, revealing his role not just in Caleb's forced disappearance years ago, but in establishing the entire trafficking network. "He built the legal framework," she explained, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Created the loopholes, paid off judges, arranged for paperwork to disappear when needed. It's all been legal on the surface, protected by privacy laws and medical confidentiality." Adam's corporate resources proved invaluable. His tech team uncovered encrypted communications between hospital board members and wealthy clients around the world. The prices being discussed for special adoptions were staggering, running into millions per child. They're targeting specific characteristics, Caleb realized, reviewing the data. Twins, like Lucas and Logan, command premium prices. That's why they're so determined to get them back. The revelation hit Amanda hard. Her sons weren't just targets because she'd discovered the truth. They were valuable commodities in a cruel marketplace she'd never imagined existed. The investigation also revealed unlikely allies. Other hospital staff began coming forward, sharing their own stories of witnessing suspicious activities. A network of whistleblowers formed, carefully coordinated through Nicole's legal channels. One night, as they reviewed their findings, Adam made a chilling connection. "Catherine's death," he said quietly, staring at a hospital record. "It wasn't just medical malpractice. They targeted her because of who I am. They knew I'd have the resources to expose them if I ever discovered the truth." The personal cost of their investigation became increasingly clear. Each new discovery reopened old wounds, forced them to confront past traumas, and revealed how deeply the corruption had affected their lives. Yet they couldn't stop. Every piece of evidence represented another family torn apart, another child sold to the highest bidder, another mother left believing she'd lost her baby to tragedy rather than greed. "We're not just fighting for Lucas and Logan anymore," Amanda declared during one late-night session. "We're fighting for every family they've destroyed, every child they've stolen, every truth they've buried." The investigation was building towards something bigger than any of them had anticipated. They weren't just uncovering a criminal enterprise, they were exposing a system that had operated in plain sight for decades, protected by wealth, power, and the assumption that no one would believe the victims. What they couldn't know was that their meticulous investigation was about to uncover a truth so explosive it would shake their newfound family to its core and force them to question everything they thought they knew about themselves and each other. In the midst of their investigation, unexpected feelings began to surface within the mansion's walls. The intensity of their situation, the shared danger, and constant proximity created bonds that went beyond mere alliance. Adam found himself increasingly drawn to Amanda, not just as someone to protect, but as a woman whose strength and devotion to her children awakened something he thought died with Catherine. He caught himself watching her during quiet moments, the way she sang softly to the twins, her determined focus during strategy meetings, the rare smile that transformed her worried face. "You're falling for her," Nicole observed one evening, finding Adam in his study long after everyone else had retired. "I see how you look at her when you think no one's watching." Adam didn't deny it, but his response revealed his inner conflict. "She's vulnerable, on the run, depending on us for protection. Any feelings would be inappropriate." Meanwhile, Amanda struggled with her own growing emotions. Adam's presence had become a source of comfort beyond mere security. She noticed the gentle way he handled the twins, how he anticipated her needs before she voiced them, the protective stance he took whenever danger threatened. One rainy evening, she found him in the nursery, reading a story to Lucas and Logan. The sight of this powerful businessman, suit jacket discarded, tie loosened, making different voices for each character, touched something deep within her. "I never thought I'd trust anyone again," she confessed to Caleb during a rare moment alone. "But Adam, he's different from what I expected." But her brother studied her face carefully. "You deserve happiness, Mandy, even in the middle of all this chaos." The tension between Caleb and Nicole developed its own complex dynamic. Their initial distrust had evolved into something electric, charged with unspoken attraction and shared understanding. They worked seamlessly together during investigations, finishing each other's thoughts, moving in perfect synchronization during security drills. Late one night, after a particularly intense strategy session, Nicole found Caleb in the security room. "Your father," he began, then hesitated. "I've spent years hating him for what he did to my family." "And now?" Nicole asked softly, stepping closer. "But now I'm grateful," Caleb admitted, "because his actions, horrible as they were, led me here, to this moment, to you." The atmosphere in the mansion shifted subtly as these relationships developed. Casual touches lingered longer than necessary. Glances held hidden meanings. Private conversations carried undertones of possibilities neither party dared to voice. Adam began finding reasons to join Amanda during her late-night vigils with the twins. She found herself seeking his company even when there was no urgent business to discuss. Their conversations grew more personal, touching on hopes and fears beyond their current crisis. "Do you ever think about after," she asked him one night, as they watched the twins sleep, "when this is all over?" Adam's response was careful but honest. "I think about it more than I should. About what could be possible if we survive this." The romantic tension added another layer of complexity to their already complicated situation. It created both strength and vulnerability, giving them more to fight for, but also more to lose. Nicole and Caleb's relationship progressed through shared danger and quiet moments of understanding. Their backgrounds should have made them enemies, but instead created a unique bond forged in redemption and second chances. During a particularly close call during a security breach, Caleb pulled Nicole into a hidden alcove, their bodies pressed close as danger passed nearby. The moment stretched, neither moving away even after the threat had passed. "We shouldn't," Nicole whispered, even as her hand curled into his shirt. "I know," Caleb responded, but his eyes told a different story. These developing relationships provided hope amidst darkness, suggesting possibilities for happiness beyond their current struggle. Yet they also created new vulnerabilities their enemies could exploit. Adam found himself making decisions not just as a strategist, but as a man falling in love with a woman and her children. Amanda's protective instincts expanded to include not just her sons, but the man who had become essential to their future. As their fight continued, these personal bonds strengthened their resolve while complicating their choices. Love, blooming in the midst of danger, became both their greatest strength and their most dangerous weakness. What none of them realized was that their enemies watched these developments with keen interest, preparing to use these emotional attachments against them in ways they never anticipated. Despite the constant threats and pressure from their enemies, the inhabitants of Adam's mansion gradually formed bonds deeper than their initial alliance. The shared danger and close quarters transformed their group from reluctant allies into a true family, each member finding their place in their unconventional household. Caleb embraced his role as uncle with unexpected enthusiasm. In the quiet hours between security shifts, he could be found in the nursery telling the twins stories about their mother's childhood. "You should have seen her," he'd say, cradling Logan. "Even at 5 years old, she was the bravest person I knew." Amanda watched these moments with tears in her eyes, seeing the brother she'd lost merge with the protector he'd become. The twins responded to him instinctively, their tiny hands reaching for him whenever he entered the room. Adam's transformation was perhaps the most profound. The corporate titan who once measured life in profit margins now spent hours on the floor with the twins, teaching them to crawl, celebrating their first words. His staff barely recognized the man who now prioritized family dinners over board meetings. Nicole, despite her initial professional distance, found herself drawn into their family circle. She began keeping a photo album, documenting the twins' milestones even amid their crisis. "For when this is over," she explained, "every family needs its history." The mansion's routine adapted to accommodate their growing bonds. Morning strategy sessions became family breakfasts, with the twins in high chairs while the adults discussed security over coffee. Evening debriefings often turned into impromptu story times, with case files set aside for children's books. Even the security team was affected by the change. Professional detachment gave way to personal investment as they watched the family they protected grow closer. Guards who once stood at attention now smiled at the twins' antics, slipped extra cookies to Amanda, and kept Adam informed of every small development in the children's day. One particularly tense night, After a close call with surveillance teams, they gathered in the living room, unwilling to separate. The twins, sensing the adult's anxiety, were restless until Adam began singing an old lullaby. His deep voice, usually reserved for corporate commands, softened as he remembered the song his mother once sang to him. To everyone's surprise, Caleb joined in, then Amanda, their voices blending in a moment of pure family connection. Nicole recorded it secretly on her phone, understanding instinctively that such moments needed preserving. The household staff, initially wary of their unusual situation, became fiercely protective of their charges. The chef prepared Amanda's favorite comfort foods without being asked. The housekeeper left small gifts for the twins, handmade toys and carefully chosen books. These strengthening bonds showed in small ways Caleb and Adam's silent understanding during security checks, Nicole's gentle teasing of both men, Amanda's growing confidence in letting others care for her sons. They moved around each other with the easy familiarity of true family. During one quiet evening, as they shared a rare, peaceful dinner, Amanda looked around the table and realized something profound. "This is what I always wanted for my boys," she said softly. "Not just protection, but family. People who love them, who'll be there as they grow up." The sentiment resonated with everyone. They'd come together for survival, but had found something far more precious. Each person at the table had known loss, had felt the absence of family in their own way. Now, against all odds, they'd created their own. These deepening bonds provided strength against their enemies, but also raised the stakes of their fight. Every threat now targeted not just individuals, but a family unit. Every decision affected not just strategic allies, but loved ones. What they didn't realize was that their growing strength as a family would soon be tested in ways none of them could anticipate. The bonds they'd forged would face challenges that would either break them completely or make them unbreakable. As the twins drifted to sleep that night, surrounded by the love of their expanded family, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Their enemies watched, waited, and planned, understanding that the strongest bonds often proved the most vulnerable to the right kind of pressure. Detective James Cooper's midnight call shattered the mansion's relative peace. His voice, usually steady, trembled with urgency. "They found Sarah," he reported. "She's alive, but they're keeping her in a private medical facility outside the city. And there's more, she's not alone." The revelation sparked a flurry of activity. Sarah's location was one breakthrough, but Cooper's next words froze everyone in place. There are other mothers there. Women who refuse to give up their babies. And children, dozens of them, waiting to be placed with wealthy families. Nicole immediately began compiling legal documents, her fingers flying over her laptop. "If we can prove the facility exists, we can get a warrant. One raid could expose everything." But Caleb, studying the facility's satellite images, saw the complexity of their situation. "It's not that simple. Look at the security. This isn't just a medical center. It's a fortress. Private security, restricted access, diplomatic immunity claims." The pieces began falling into place faster now. Adam's financial team uncovered a network of shell companies linking the facility to prominent names in Seattle's elite. Hospital board members, judges, even police officials all had financial ties to what appeared to be a legitimate medical research center. They're hiding in plain sight, Amanda realized, reviewing patient transfer records. Every failed adoption, every baby that supposedly didn't survive, they all ended up here. The investigation revealed a pattern more sinister than they'd imagined. The facility served multiple purposes, holding resistant mothers until they could be pressured into compliance, housing children until suitable buyers were found, and silencing potential whistleblowers like Sarah. Adam's expression darkened as he connected more dots. "Catherine," he said quietly, "this is where they took her after the supposed complications. She didn't die in childbirth, they murdered her because she discovered something." The scope of the conspiracy stunned them all. What had started as an investigation into forced adoptions had uncovered an international human trafficking operation protected by some of the most powerful people in Seattle. Nicole found evidence of similar facilities in other cities, all operating under the guise of medical centers. It's not just one hospital, she explained. It's a network. They identify vulnerable mothers, create situations that force them to give up their children, then sell those children to wealthy clients worldwide. Caleb's police contacts provided another disturbing angle. The adoption records aren't just about selling babies, he revealed. They're using them for blackmail. Every wealthy family that unknowingly adopted through their network becomes another pawn in their game. The discovery of Sarah's location forced them to accelerate their plans. Each day she remained in the facility increased the danger, not just to her but to every mother and child held there. "We need to move carefully," Adam warned. "One wrong step, and they'll destroy evidence, move the children, silence the witnesses. We need to take down the entire network at once." Amanda, studying the facility's layout, noticed something that made her blood run cold. These medical supplies they're ordering, they're not for patient care. They're sedatives, memory-altering drugs. They're not just holding people, they're trying to make them forget. The unraveling conspiracy revealed layers of corruption none of them had anticipated. Every new discovery suggested wider reach, more influential players, deeper roots in Seattle's power structure. Cooper's final revelation hit hardest. "There's a list," he said. "High-profile clients waiting for special adoptions, people who specifically requested twins. Lucas and Logan were never random targets, they were already promised to someone powerful." The knowledge galvanized their resolve. This wasn't just about protecting two children anymore, it was about exposing a system that had destroyed countless families under the guise of legitimate medical care. As they planned their next move, each person understood the stakes had risen exponentially. They weren't just fighting a corrupt hospital or a few powerful individuals, they were taking on an entire network that had operated with impunity for decades. The conspiracy was unraveling, but its death throes would prove more dangerous than anything they'd faced before. Their enemies, backed into a corner, would stop at nothing to protect their secrets, even if it meant destroying everyone in their path. The raid on Seattle Grace Hospital began at exactly 3 a.m., when the night shift was at its most vulnerable. Adam's private security team, working in concert with Detective Cooper's trusted officers, moved with surgical precision through the darkened corridors. Caleb led the first team, his military training evident in every calculated move. Nicole accompanied them, her presence ensuring legal oversight of every piece of evidence they gathered. Their target, the hospital's secure records room, where the true documentation of their trafficking operation was hidden. Remember, Caleb's voice crackled over their secure comms. "We need everything intact. Every file, every record, it all has to be admissible in court." Amanda, against everyone's protests, insisted on being part of the operation. Her knowledge of hospital protocols and layout proved invaluable as they navigated the maze of restricted areas. "The backup servers are through here," she whispered, leading them through a service corridor she'd discovered years ago. The first resistance came from private security guards, not regular hospital staff, but heavily armed professionals. The ensuing confrontation was brief but intense, with both sides trying to minimize noise and damage. Adam, coordinating from his mobile command center in the parking garage, watched through surveillance feeds as the operation unfolded. "Second team, you have company coming up the south stairwell. Hospital board members, looks like they got tipped off." Dr. Henderson, the board chairman, appeared with his own security detail, his usual smooth demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. "You have no authority here," he snarled at Nicole, who stood her ground with a court order in hand. "Actually, we do," she replied, her voice steady. "Federal warrant, signed by a judge you don't own. The game's over, Doctor." The confrontation escalated as more hospital staff arrived, some trying to destroy evidence, others attempting to contact their powerful patrons. But Adam's team had already isolated the building's communications. No calls were getting out. In the records room, Amanda discovered something that made her blood run cold. "These aren't just adoption records," she called out. scanning through files, their genetic profiles. They've been screening mothers, targeting specific traits their clients want. Caleb's team encountered the heaviest resistance outside the hospital's restricted wing. They're protecting something bigger than records, he reported, engaging with security forces that seemed more military than medical. The truth revealed itself as they breached the secured area. Behind reinforced doors, they found a fully equipped nursery, empty now, but clearly designed to hold multiple infants. State-of-the-art medical equipment, mixed with surveillance systems and security measures more appropriate for a prison than a hospital. "This is where they kept them," Amanda whispered, her voice breaking as she touched a tiny hospital bracelet left behind. "This is where they processed the babies they stole." The evidence they uncovered was damning. Hidden cameras revealed the true nature of the adoption counseling sessions, mothers being coerced, threatened, or drugged into compliance. Financial records showed millions flowing through offshore accounts disguised as medical payments. Dr. Henderson made one last attempt to stop them, offering deals, threats, and finally desperate pleas. "You don't understand what you're doing," he warned. "The people behind this, they'll destroy you all." "They can try," Adam replied, stepping out of the shadows. His presence seemed to deflate the last of Henderson's resistance. The man who had once threatened Catherine, who had overseen countless separated families, crumbled in the face of justice. As dawn broke over Seattle, the full scope of their operation became clear. Not just evidence of trafficking, but proof of a decades-long conspiracy involving some of the city's most prominent figures. Names on documents, signatures on orders, financial trails that couldn't be denied. But their victory felt incomplete. The hospital was just one piece of the puzzle. Somewhere out there, Sarah and other mothers were still held captive. The facility where they were kept remained a heavily guarded secret. As police secured the scene and evidence teams began their work, Amanda stood in what had been the nursery, her hand resting on an empty crib. How many, she wondered aloud, how many families did they destroy in this room? The hospital confrontation had given them what they needed to expose the truth, but it had also alerted their enemies to the full extent of their investigation. The real battle was just beginning, and their opponents would stop at nothing to protect their remaining secrets. But what none of them realized was that among the evidence they'd seized were documents that would reveal truths far more personal and devastating than any of them were prepared to face. The discovery came 3 days after the hospital raid, as Nicole pored over seized documents in Adam's study. Her hands trembled as she read the file marked Project Legacy, her father's signature prominent on every page. It wasn't just about money, she announced to the room, her voice uncharacteristically shaky. The trafficking, the adoptions, they were part of something bigger. Something my father started 20 years ago. The others gathered around as she spread the documents across Adam's desk. Project Legacy detailed a systematic program to identify and acquire children with specific genetic markers, placing them with carefully selected families. They were building a network, Nicole continued, each word seeming to cost her physically. These children weren't just sold, they were placed strategically. Law firms, medical practices, political families. They were creating the next generation of power brokers. Caleb noticed her distress first, moving closer as she revealed the most devastating part. "I wasn't just Richard Hart's daughter," she whispered. "I was his first success story, a proof of concept." The documents revealed that Nicole herself had been one of the first babies acquired through the program. Her entire life, her intelligence, her drive for justice, her position in Seattle's legal community had been engineered from birth. "Every achievement I thought was mine," she said, tears finally breaking through her professional facade, was part of their plan. They didn't just steal babies, they designed lives. Amanda reached for her hand, recognizing the pain of having one's identity shattered. "This doesn't change who you are, Nicole. What you've done to help us to fight them, that's all you." But Nicole wasn't finished. The documents revealed more connections. Sarah Mitchell wasn't just a random hospital director. She was part of the original research team. She adopted Amanda to protect her from the program. The revelation stunned them all. Amanda sank into a chair, processing this new layer of her past. Mom knew? All this time. She did more than know, Nicole explained, finding another file. She's been working to dismantle the program from the inside for years. That's why they took her. She wasn't just a threat to the hospital. She was a threat to the entire project. Adam watched the implications unfold, seeing how this revelation changed everything they thought they knew. So when they targeted Amanda's twins, it wasn't random, Nicole finished. They want them because of their genetic potential, and because taking them would complete the circle. The daughter, Sarah, saved having her own children taken by the program. Caleb struggled to reconcile this information with his own past. My disappearance, my parents' accident, it was all connected to this. Nicole nodded grimly. You were getting too close to the truth in your investigation. They needed you gone, needed Amanda vulnerable and alone. The weight of these connections settled over the room. Their individual tragedies, which had seemed separate, were actually threads in a single, devastating tapestry. There's more, Nicole said, her voice dropping lower. The facility where they're holding Sarah and the others. It's not just a detention center. It's where the program began, where they perfected their methods. For Nicole, each revelation felt like a blow to her very identity. Everything she thought she knew about herself, her drive for justice, her fight against corruption, had it all been programmed into her? But as she looked at the faces around her, Caleb's unwavering support, Amanda's understanding, Adam's quiet strength, she realized something important. Her choices in this fight, her decision to stand against her father's legacy, those were truly hers. We use this, she said finally, straightening with new resolve. Everything I am, everything they tried to make me, we use it to destroy them. The others nodded, understanding that Nicole's revelation had given them both a weapon and a weakness. The program's existence proved the conspiracy went deeper than anyone had imagined, but exposing it would mean devastating countless families who had no idea about their children's origins. What none of them could predict was how this revelation would affect their next moves, or how their enemies would use Nicole's true identity as leverage in the coming battle. Inside the high-security medical facility outside Seattle, Sarah Mitchell sat in her stark white room, methodically documenting everything she remembered about Project Legacy. 20 years of secrets, carefully preserved in her brilliant mind, now flowed onto pages of smuggled paper. When the guards brought her dinner, she maintained the facade of a broken woman, shoulders slumped, eyes vacant. But beneath the act, she was counting security rotations, mapping staff changes, gathering intelligence that would prove vital for what was to come. The truth about her role in Project Legacy haunted her every waking moment. As one of the original genetic researchers, she had helped create the program that would destroy so many families. Her redemption began the day she first saw Amanda's genetic profile cross her desk. Subject shows exceptional markers she had written in her official report. Recommend immediate acquisition. But instead of processing Amanda through the program, Sarah had done the unthinkable. She'd adopted her herself, using her position to protect the child from the very system she'd helped create. That decision marked the beginning of her silent rebellion. Over the years, she worked to place other targeted children with families who would love them, not just fulfill the program's grand design. Each successful sabotage was a small victory against the monster she'd helped create. Now, as she listened to the facility's daily rhythms, Sarah knew her time was running out. The other mothers held here, some still pregnant, others recovering from forced separations, represented the program's future. Their children would be the next generation of carefully placed assets. Through carefully orchestrated conversations during supervised exercise periods, Sarah had been sharing her knowledge with these women. Remember, she'd whisper when guards weren't listening, "Your children aren't lost. There's hope. People are coming." Her own situation grew more precarious each day. The program's directors knew she had evidence hidden somewhere, documentation that could expose everything. Their interrogations grew increasingly intense, but Sarah held firm, protecting one final secret. What no one knew, not even Amanda, was that Sarah had spent years preparing for this moment. Every file she'd secretly copied, every record she'd carefully preserved, was secured in multiple locations, waiting to be activated by specific triggers. When news of the hospital raid reached the facility, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. She recognized Amanda's influence in the precision of the operation, Adam's resources in its scope, and Caleb's tactical planning in its execution. The facility directors grew nervous, their visits to her room more frequent and aggressive. "Where are the files, Sarah?" they would demand. "Tell us what you shared with your daughter." But Sarah had learned patience during her years of quiet resistance. Each threatening visit only confirmed that her plan was working. The program was vulnerable, and for the first time, truly afraid. Through the facility's carefully controlled information channels, Sarah caught glimpses of the outside investigation. Nicole's name appeared in legal documents, and Sarah felt a deep sadness for the young woman who would soon discover her own connection to the program. The other pieces were falling into place. Sarah had ensured that certain documents from her time at Seattle Grace would be found during the raid. Those files would lead investigators here to this facility where the program's darkest secrets were housed. What pained her most was knowing how Amanda would react to learning the full truth. Her daughter's fierce sense of justice would be shaken by the revelation that her adoption had been part of a larger plan, even if that plan was one of rebellion. But Sarah had one final card to play: information about a third Mitchell baby. The truth about Lucas and Logan's missing sibling was hidden in her encoded files, along with evidence that would bring down not just the program, but the entire network of power that supported it. As she finished another page of her secret documentation, Sarah heard unusual movement in the facility's corridors. The rescue she'd been waiting for was coming, but so was the reckoning she'd spent 20 years preparing to face. What Sarah couldn't know was that her carefully laid plans would intersect with forces she hadn't anticipated, leading to a confrontation that would test not just her own redemption, but the bonds of the family she'd fought so hard to protect. In her room, Sarah Mitchell straightened her papers and prepared for whatever came next. She had helped create a monster, but she would die if necessary to destroy it. For Amanda, for the twins, and for every family the program had torn apart, she would see this through to the end. The betrayal came from an unexpected source. Detective James Cooper, their trusted ally within the police department, had been playing both sides. His midnight call to the mansion was meant to lure them into a trap. "Sarah's being moved tonight," he reported, his voice carrying just the right note of urgency. "It's our best chance to get her out." The team mobilized quickly, trusting Cooper's intelligence without question. Adam coordinated from the mansion while Caleb led the rescue team. Amanda insisted on coming, her medical knowledge potentially crucial for her mother's condition. Nicole, reviewing the facility's blueprints one last time, felt the first twinge of unease. "Something's not right," she muttered, studying access points. "The security patterns are too perfect, too predictable." But they were already in motion. 3 black SUVs moved through Seattle's rain-slicked streets, carrying their rescue team toward the facility. Cooper's police credentials got them through the first checkpoint without incident. The betrayal revealed itself in stages. First, the security systems they'd expected to hack were already disabled. Then, the guards they'd prepared to encounter were mysteriously absent from their posts. "It's too easy," Caleb radioed, his military instincts screaming warnings, but they were already too deep to retreat. The trap sprung when they reached Sarah's supposed location. Instead of finding her ready for transport, they faced a heavily armed tactical team. Cooper's voice came over the facility's intercom, all pretense gone. "I'm sorry," he said, though his tone carried no remorse, "but the program must be protected. Some secrets are worth killing for." The betrayal hit Caleb hardest. Cooper had been his partner, his friend, someone he'd trusted with his life. Now that trust would cost them everything. Fighting erupted in the confined corridors. Caleb's team, though outnumbered, fought with the desperation of those who knew failure meant death. Nicole used her knowledge of the facility's layout to guide them toward potential escape routes. Amanda, separated from the others in the chaos, found herself in a restricted wing. Through observation windows, she saw rows of women in hospital beds, some pregnant, others clearly recovering from recent births. The program's current victims hidden in plain sight. Then she heard a familiar voice, weak but unmistakable. Amanda Sarah Mitchell called from a nearby room. "Is that really you?" The reunion was brief but crucial. Sarah, though weakened by captivity, quickly shared vital information. Cooper's not the only traitor, she warned. The program has sleeper agents everywhere, people conditioned from childhood to protect it. This revelation cast their entire fight in a new light. How many of their allies were secretly working against them? How deep did the betrayal go? Adam, monitoring the situation from outside, realized the magnitude of their predicament. The facility was being surrounded by what appeared to be legitimate law enforcement, all responding to Cooper's call about terrorists attacking a medical center. "Get out now," he ordered over their secure channel. "They're going to lock down the entire area." But escape wouldn't be simple. Cooper had planned his betrayal carefully, blocking their predetermined escape routes and cutting off communication with potential reinforcements. In the midst of chaos, Nicole made a desperate decision. Using her father's old security codes knowledge she'd gained from the Project Legacy files, she triggered a facility-wide evacuation alarm. The resulting confusion provided cover for their escape. Sarah, supported by Amanda and protected by Caleb's team, made it to one of their vehicles. Other women from the facility, sensing an opportunity, fled into the night. Cooper's voice followed them through the facility's speakers, his words chilling in their certainty. "You can't expose the truth without destroying thousands of lives. Every person placed by the program, every family built on its foundation, they'll all be collateral damage." The escape was costly. Several team members were wounded, and their enemies now knew exactly who they were fighting. Cooper's betrayal had exposed vulnerabilities they didn't know they had. As they sped back toward the mansion's safety, Sarah shared one final, devastating piece of information. "Cooper wasn't turned," she explained weakly. "He was never on our side. He's one of the program's original successors placed in law enforcement specifically to protect their interests." This revelation left them questioning everything. How many other allies were actually program plants? Who could they truly trust? The rain continued to fall as they reached the mansion's gates, washing away physical evidence of their fight, but leaving the wounds of betrayal raw and bleeding. They had rescued Sarah, but at a terrible cost: the loss of security, trust, and the illusion that they understood the true scope of what they faced. What none of them realized was that Cooper's betrayal, devastating as it was, would soon be overshadowed by revelations that would shake their makeshift family to its very foundation. The final confrontation came at dawn, 3 days after Sarah's rescue. The mansion's security systems detected multiple approaching vehicles, not the subtle infiltration teams they'd faced before, but a full tactical assault. Sarah, still weak from her captivity, understood immediately what was coming. "They're not here to capture us," she told the others as they gathered in Adam's study. "They're here to end this, permanently." The proof of her words came minutes later when the first shots hit the mansion's reinforced windows. This wasn't a surgical strike to retrieve the twins, it was an elimination order. "Get Amanda and the children to the panic room," Sarah commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had prepared for this moment for decades. "I'll buy you time." Adam protested, but Sarah's next words stopped him cold. "I created this monster," she said, pulling a small device from her pocket. "It's fitting that I end it, but I need you to protect my daughter and grandsons." Before anyone could stop her, Sarah Mitchell walked out the mansion's front door, alone and unarmed. The attacking forces hesitated, confused by this unexpected development. "Richard," she called out, and from the lead vehicle emerged Nicole's father, the architect of Project Legacy. "I wondered when you'd finally come yourself." Richard Hart approached, his expensive suit incongruous among the tactical teams. "You could have been part of something magnificent, Sarah. We were creating the future." "We were playing God," she replied, her finger hovering over the device in her hand, "and I've spent 20 years preparing to end it." Inside the mansion, Nicole accessed Sarah's final files, understanding dawning as she read. She encrypted everything she gasped, every record, every name, every transaction, and linked it all to her vital signs. "If they kill her," Caleb began. "Everything goes public," Amanda finished, tears streaming down her face as she realized what her mother planned. Outside, Sarah stood her ground as Richard approached. "Think carefully," she warned. "I die and every secret you buried gets exposed. Every family will know the truth about their children. Every power broker will face their complicity." "You're bluffing," Richard snarled, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Sarah smiled sadly. "You know I'm not, but what you don't know is that I've already won." Her finger pressed the button. The device wasn't what they expected. Instead of triggering the file release, it activated something else, a cascade of evidence being sent to every major news outlet, law enforcement agency, and watchdog group globally. "I wasn't waiting to die," Sarah explained, her voice carrying to the stunned observers. "I was waiting for you to show yourself, to prove the connection between Project Legacy and its enforcement arm." The shooting started before she could say more. Sarah Mitchell, creator-turned-destroyer of Project Legacy, fell as the morning sun broke through Seattle's clouds. Inside the mansion, Amanda's scream of grief was drowned out by the chaos that followed. The attacking forces, realizing what Sarah had done, turned on each other. Some tried to retreat, others pressed the attack, all discipline dissolving. Sarah's sacrifice achieved what years of careful planning couldn't. It broke the program's unity of purpose. As news alerts began flooding everyone's phones, the magnitude of what she'd done became clear. She hadn't just exposed Project Legacy, she'd provided evidence of every person involved, every crime committed, every family affected. Her death wasn't the trigger for the information's release, her actions in those final moments were. As medical examiner vehicles arrived alongside legitimate law enforcement, Amanda stood at the mansion's window, her mother's body visible on the rain-soaked lawn. The twins, too young to understand, reached for her tears. "She saved us all," Nicole whispered, reading through the flood of released documents. She knew the only way to truly end it was to make everyone face the truth at once. Sarah Mitchell's sacrifice would be remembered not just as the end of Project Legacy, but as the moment when decades of carefully constructed lies began to unravel. She had died as she had lived her final years, protecting her daughter and fighting to right the wrongs she had helped create. What none of them knew yet was that Sarah's final gift to them went beyond exposing the truth. Hidden in the files she released was information that would change everything they thought they knew about family, identity, and the true meaning of legacy. The revelation came buried deep in Sarah's files, a medical record that Amanda discovered while going through her mother's digital legacy. Her hands trembled as she read the document dated the day of the twins' birth. "Triplets," she whispered, the word falling like a stone in Adam's quiet study. There were 3 of them. The record was clear: 3 heartbeats, 3 distinct babies documented during her pregnancy. But somewhere between delivery and her desperate escape from the hospital, one child had vanished, expertly erased from official records. "They took her," Amanda's voice broke as she continued reading. "A girl. They took my daughter while I was unconscious. The pain of this new loss, layered over her grief for Sarah, threatened to overwhelm her." Caleb moved immediately to his sister's side, but it was Adam who spoke first. "Sarah knew," he said quietly, pulling up another encrypted file. "She tracked your daughter's placement through the program's network." The details emerged like pieces of a shattered mirror, each fragment reflecting a different aspect of the truth. The third baby, named Grace by her adoptive parents, had been placed with a prominent federal judge insurance against any legal challenges to the program. Nicole's legal expertise provided crucial context. They split up multiples when possible, she explained, her voice gentle. It gave them more leverage, more control over the families involved. The revelation sparked a new urgency in their mission. It wasn't just about exposing the truth anymore, it was about reuniting a family that had been deliberately torn apart. "She's in Washington, D.C., Caleb reported, following the trail Sarah had left them. The judge and his wife, they don't know the truth. They think she was a legitimate adoption." Amanda struggled with conflicting emotions. Her daughter was alive, safe and loved, but by another family, one that had been unknowing pawns in the program's schemes. "What do we do?" she asked, looking around at the faces that had become her family. "They're innocent in this. They've raised her for months, loved her." Adam's response was immediate and firm. "We tell them the truth. Give them a chance to do the right thing." His hand found Amanda's, squeezing gently. "No more secrets, no more manipulation." The judge's family, when contacted, reacted with shock and disbelief that quickly turned to horror as the evidence was presented. Sarah's meticulous records left no room for doubt about Grace's true origins. The reunion was arranged carefully, with Nicole handling the legal aspects and Adam providing his private jet for the journey to D.C. The judge's wife, herself a victim of the program's manipulation, became an unexpected ally. "We always felt something wasn't right about the adoption," she admitted when they met. "The paperwork was too perfect, the process too smooth." Grace, when Amanda finally held her, fit perfectly with her brothers as if they had never been separated. The twins, too young to understand the complexity of the situation, simply accepted their sister's presence with innocent joy. But the revelation of Grace's existence raised new questions. How many other families had been similarly divided? How many siblings separated, their connections erased by the program's machinations? The judge and his wife made a difficult but compassionate decision. Rather than fight for custody, they proposed a shared arrangement allowing Grace to maintain bonds with both families while ensuring she knew her true history. "She deserves all the love she can get," the judge's wife said, tears in her eyes, "and she deserves to know her brothers, her mother, her whole story." The discovery of Grace became a symbol of both the program's cruelty and the possibility of healing. Families across the country, learning of their own connections to Project Legacy, began reaching out to each other, seeking lost siblings and hidden truths. What no one could have predicted was how Grace's story would become the key to unlocking the program's final secrets that would lead them to one last, devastating revelation about the true scope of Project Legacy's ambitions. The aftermath of Sarah's sacrifice and Grace's discovery left deep scars on everyone involved. The mansion, once a fortress of protection, now felt haunted by absence. Sarah's empty chair at breakfast, her unused coffee cup, the notes in her handwriting scattered throughout their research, each detail was a fresh wound. Amanda struggled most visibly with the weight of loss and revelation. The joy of finding Grace warred with the grief of losing her mother, creating an emotional turbulence that manifested in sleepless nights and quiet tears. The twins, sensing their mother's distress, became clingy and unsettled, their innocent need for comfort both a blessing and a burden. "I keep thinking I hear her voice," Amanda confessed to Adam late one night, as they watched over the sleeping children. "Every time I solve a problem or make a decision, I wonder what Mum would think, what advice she'd give." Adam's own costs were measured in different ways. His empire, built over decades of careful management, began to crumble as his involvement in exposing Project Legacy became public. Board members resigned, stocks plummeted, and longtime business partners distanced themselves. "It's worth it," he would say whenever anyone expressed concern, but the strain showed in the new lines around his eyes, the silver threading through his hair. Nicole faced perhaps the most complex personal aftermath. The revelation of her own origins as a Project Legacy child, combined with her father's role in the program, left her questioning every aspect of her identity. "Was anything real?" she asked Caleb during one vulnerable moment. "My choices, my career, my fight for justice, was it all just programming?" Caleb carried his own burden of guilt and regret. Cooper's betrayal had shaken his faith in his ability to judge character, to protect those he loved. Each security decision now came weighted with doubt, each trust given carefully measured against potential betrayal. The judge's family, though supportive of Grace's connection to her birth family, struggled with their role in the program's machinations. Their pain added another layer of complexity to an already difficult situation. "We thought we were giving a child a home," the judge's wife said during one of their shared custody transitions. "Instead, we were unwitting participants in something horrific." The professional costs were equally severe. Nicole's legal career suffered as colleagues questioned her judgment and loyalty. Caleb's law enforcement connections, crucial to their investigation, were severed by Cooper's betrayal. Even the mansion's staff felt the impact. Many left, unable to handle the constant tension and security concerns. Those who stayed did so out of loyalty, but their fear was palpable in every careful movement and watchful glance. The children, though too young to understand, absorbed the emotional atmosphere around them. The twins became more protective of each other, while Grace displayed an unusual awareness of adult emotions that spoke to her early trauma. "They'll carry this with them," Amanda worried, watching her children play. "Even if they don't remember the details, it will shape who they become." The physical toll was evident in all of them. Sleep became a luxury. Meals were often forgotten, and the constant vigilance required by their situation left them exhausted and strained. Yet amid the costs, there were unexpected gains. The bonds between them, forged in crisis and strengthened by shared loss, became unbreakable. They were no longer just allies or even friends, they had become family in the truest sense. Adam and Amanda's relationship deepened through their shared responsibility for the children. Caleb and Nicole found understanding and comfort in each other's company. The children, despite the trauma surrounding their early months, were surrounded by love and protection. "We lost so much," Amanda reflected one evening, watching her complete family together for the first time. "But look at what we found." The personal costs of their fight against Project Legacy would never fully heal, but they had gained something precious in return: a family built, not on genetic engineering or strategic placement, but on choice, love, and shared sacrifice. What they didn't yet realize was that these costs were preparing them for one final challenge, a revelation that would test whether their newfound family bonds were strong enough to survive the ultimate truth. The emotional shockwaves from Sarah's death and Grace's discovery rippled through the mansion with devastating force. Each member of their makeshift family processed the trauma differently, creating a complex web of grief, hope, and healing. Amanda found herself caught in a cycle of contradictory emotions. The joy of holding Grace would suddenly give way to overwhelming guilt for not knowing about her daughter sooner, for not preventing her mother's death, for putting everyone she loved in danger. "Sometimes I look at them," she confided to Adam one night, watching all three children sleep, "and I can't breathe. The love is so intense it hurts, but so is the fear of losing them." The twins, Lucas and Logan, developed an almost supernatural awareness of their sister's presence and their mother's emotional state. They would crawl to Amanda whenever her grief became overwhelming, their tiny hands patting her face as if trying to wipe away tears she hadn't yet shed. Grace, despite her young age, showed signs of understanding her unique situation. She would alternate between her two families with remarkable adaptability, but always seemed most at peace when all three siblings were together. Adam struggled with his role as both protector and comforter. His business instincts pushed him to fix problems, to find solutions, but he learned that some wounds couldn't be solved with money or power. They required patience, presence, and understanding. "I don't know how to help her," he admitted to Caleb during a late-night security check. "I can protect them, provide for them, but I can't take away her pain." Caleb battled his own demons. His sister's grief mirrored his own loss of their parents years ago, now compounded by Sarah's death. The weight of responsibility for his sister, his nephews and niece, for everyone's safety pressed down on him constantly. Nicole's legal training hadn't prepared her for the emotional complexity of their situation. Her attempts to maintain professional distance crumbled in the face of shared trauma and growing attachments. "We're all broken in different ways," she observed during a quiet moment with Caleb. "But maybe that's why we fit together so well." The judge and his wife brought their own dimension of emotional aftermath. Their genuine love for Grace warred with their horror at being part of the program's manipulation. Each visit, each exchange, carried layers of guilt, love, and determination to make things right. Even the mansion itself seemed to reflect their emotional state. Rooms that had once been formal and impersonal now held evidence of healing, children's toys scattered across expensive carpets, family photos replacing corporate art, the sound of laughter mixing with tears. The nights were often the hardest. Nightmares plagued them all, Amanda reliving her mother's death, Adam remembering Catherine, Caleb seeing Cooper's betrayal play out again and again. They developed unspoken routines, taking turns comforting each other through the dark hours. Yet amid the pain, new bonds formed and strengthened. The children became the center of their healing, their innocent need for love and stability forcing the adults to move forward, to find strength they didn't know they possessed. "We're not just surviving anymore," Amanda realized one evening, watching Adam read a bedtime story to all three children while Caleb and Nicole listened from the doorway. "We're learning to live again." The emotional aftermath of their ordeal would never fully fade, but it transformed into something else: a deep understanding of love's cost and worth, of family's true meaning, of strength found in shared vulnerability. What they were only beginning to understand was that this emotional foundation, built through shared pain and healing, would become crucial in facing the challenges still to come. Their journey wasn't over, it was merely entering a new phase, one that would require all the strength their newfound family bonds could provide. Sarah Mitchell's final act unleashed a tsunami of revelations that swept across Seattle and beyond. Her meticulously documented evidence, released simultaneously to law enforcement agencies and media outlets worldwide, exposed Project Legacy in its entirety. The scope of the conspiracy stunned even those who had fought against it. Thousands of children, strategically placed over decades, formed an invisible network of influence spanning government, business, and legal institutions. The program's reach extended far beyond simple human trafficking into social engineering on a massive scale. "It's like they were creating their own society," Nicole explained during a press conference, her voice steady despite the personal cost of exposure. Every placement was calculated, every adoption designed to build their version of a perfect world. The arrests began within hours of the information's release. Hospital board members, corrupt officials, and program operatives found themselves facing federal charges. Richard Hart, attempting to flee the country, was intercepted at a private airfield. Adam's corporate resources, now fully dedicated to exposing the truth, helped trace the program's financial networks. The money trail revealed connections to some of the world's most powerful people, all complicit in buying and selling children for their genetic potential. The truly devastating part, Amanda told investigators, isn't just the crimes they committed. It's the lives they manipulated, the families they engineered for their own purposes. Cooper's role as a program plant led to a widespread investigation of law enforcement. Other sleeper agents were discovered, their entire careers revealed as carefully constructed covers for the program's protection. The public reaction was overwhelming. Families who had adopted through Seattle Grace and similar hospitals around the country began demanding DNA tests, desperate to know if their children had been part of the program. Support groups formed overnight, connecting parents and children affected by the revelations. Sarah's documentation proved irrefutable. She had collected evidence for 20 years, building a case so thorough that no amount of money or influence could suppress it. Her sacrifice ensured that the truth couldn't be buried again. The medical facility where Sarah had been held revealed horrors beyond their initial discoveries. Dozens of women were freed, their stories of coercion and forced separations adding to the growing evidence against the program's operators. Mom knew exactly what she was doing, Amanda realized, reviewing the released files. She wasn't just exposing crimes, she was making sure every victim could find answers, find closure. The international implications grew as similar programs were uncovered in other countries. Project Legacy had spawned imitators, each adapting its methods to create their own networks of influence through controlled adoptions. For those at the mansion, watching the conspiracy unravel brought mixed emotions. Vindication came with the cost of seeing how deep the corruption had run, how many lives had been affected by the program's ambitions. The children placed by the program faced their own crisis of identity. Some were adults now, successful in careers they suddenly realized had been chosen for them before birth. The question of nature versus nurture took on new meaning as they grappled with their program destinies. What they did was play God, Nicole testified before a congressional committee. They didn't just separate families, they tried to engineer the future itself. As the full scope of Project Legacy came to light, its victims began to find each other. Siblings separated at birth, parents who had been told their children died, families fractured by the program's machinations all began the process of reconnection and healing. The exposure brought a new kind of chaos into their lives. Media attention, legal proceedings, and the constant need to protect the children from public scrutiny tested their already strained resources. But amid the turmoil, they found strength in the truth's release. The conspiracy's exposure meant they no longer had to hide, to constantly look over their shoulders. The battle had shifted from survival to healing, from protection to restoration. What they didn't realize was that the greatest revelation was still to come, a truth hidden so deeply in Sarah's files that even she might not have known its full implications. The final revelation emerged from the deepest layer of Sarah's encrypted files, a truth so carefully hidden that it had survived decades of investigation. Nicole found it late one night, buried in code that had taken weeks to crack. "Look at this," she called to the others, her voice shaking. The computer screen displayed a genetic profile that linked three seemingly unrelated individuals: Amanda, Nicole, and Adam. "It's impossible," Adam whispered, but the evidence was undeniable. All three shared genetic markers that could only mean one thing: they were siblings, separated at birth by the very first iteration of Project Legacy. The truth struck like lightning. Sarah hadn't just stumbled upon Project Legacy, she'd been trying to protect her own children from it. Years before Amanda's adoption, she had discovered three babies already separated and placed who shared distinctive genetic traits. She spent years tracking us down, Amanda realized, reading through Sarah's private notes. She could only reach me directly, but she found ways to watch over all of us. The revelation explains so much: Adam's instant connection to Amanda and the twins, Nicole's lifelong drive for justice, the inexplicable sense of familiarity they'd felt upon meeting. They weren't just allies against the program, they were its first victims. Mom's final message, Amanda read aloud from a decoded file. She wrote, "I couldn't save you all then, but I made sure you'd find each other when the time was right. The family they tried to destroy has become stronger than they ever imagined." The discovery rocked their already complex relationships. Adam and Amanda's growing romantic feelings now faced an impossible barrier. Nicole's struggle with her identity took on new dimensions as she realized Richard Hart wasn't her biological father. "She protected us in different ways," Nicole noted, finding evidence of Sarah's subtle influence throughout their lives. "She guided Adam's business toward investigating the hospital, steered my legal career toward family law, arranged circumstances that would eventually bring us together. Caleb watched the siblings process their connection, understanding now why he'd felt such a strong protective instinct toward both Nicole and Amanda. Sarah was playing a long game, he observed. She used the program's own methods against them. The twins and Grace, too young to understand the complexity, simply gained an aunt and uncle who loved them fiercely. Their natural bond with both Adam and Nicole now made perfect sense, blood calling to blood across years of separation. For Adam, the revelation forced a brutal reassessment of his feelings for Amanda. The love he'd begun to feel had to transform into something else no less powerful, but fundamentally different. The sacrifice added another layer to their shared trauma. Nicole found herself caught between grief and gratitude. The father she'd hated was not her father at all, but the mother she'd never known had been watching over her entire life, guiding her path from afar. She couldn't tell us directly, Amanda explained, finding more of Sarah's notes. The program was watching too closely. She had to wait until everything was in place, until we were strong enough together to face the truth. The revelation spread ripples through their fight against Project Legacy. Their personal stake in exposing the program's crimes took on new meaning. They weren't just seeking justice for others, but for themselves, for the family that had been torn apart before they could even know each other. The mansion, already a sanctuary, became something more, a place where a fractured family could finally begin to heal, to understand their shared history, to build new bonds that honored both blood and choice. Sarah's final gift to her children wasn't just the truth of their connection, but the family they'd built while fighting together. Through her careful planning, she'd ensured that when they finally found each other, they would be surrounded by love, strength, and understanding. What they couldn't know was that this revelation, devastating as it was, would ultimately provide the key to their final victory over Project Legacy's remaining shadows. The path to redemption began differently for each person touched by Project Legacy's revelation. In the weeks following the exposure of their shared heritage, the inhabitants of Adam's mansion faced the challenge of rebuilding not just their relationships, but their entire understanding of family. Adam's redemption started with a difficult conversation with Amanda. "I need you to know," he said one evening, watching the children play, "that what I feel for you hasn't changed. It's just transformed. You're still the most important person in my life, just in a different way now." But Amanda understood. Their romantic feelings, cut short by revelation of their biological connection, evolved into something equally powerful, a sibling bond strengthened by shared trauma and healing. "We were always meant to be family," she replied. "Just not the way we thought." Nicole's journey toward redemption proved more complex. The discovery that Richard Hart wasn't her biological father freed her from the weight of his legacy, but left her questioning her life's purpose. "I built my entire career on fighting against him," she confided to Caleb. "Who am I without that drive?" Caleb helped her find new meaning in her work. Together, they established a foundation dedicated to reuniting families separated by Project Legacy, using Nicole's legal expertise and Caleb's investigative skills to heal wounds decades in the making. The judge and his wife, Grace's adoptive parents, found their own path to redemption through radical honesty. Rather than hiding their involvement in the program, they became vocal advocates for adoption reform, using their influence to change the very system that had manipulated them. Even some of the program's former operatives sought redemption. Junior staff members, nurses, and administrative personnel came forward with evidence, choosing truth over complicity. Their testimonies helped bring down the remaining power structures that had protected Project Legacy. For the children, redemption came naturally. The twins and Grace, growing up surrounded by love from both biological and chosen family, demonstrated the healing power of acceptance. Their innocent ability to love without judgment taught the adults valuable lessons about forgiveness. Sarah's reputation underwent its own redemption. As more of her work came to light, people began to understand the complexity of her choices. She was transformed in public perception from a program collaborator to a long-term resistance fighter who had sacrificed everything to protect her children. Amanda found redemption in motherhood, not just for her own children but for other mothers affected by the program. She established a support network, using her medical background and personal experience to help families deal with the trauma of separation and reunion. Adam redirected his business empire toward healing the damage Project Legacy had caused. He established research grants for genetic ethics, funded counseling services for affected families, and used his influence to advocate for stricter adoption regulations. The mansion itself underwent a transformation, its gates opening to welcome other families seeking healing and reunion. The fortress of protection became a sanctuary of recovery, its rooms filled with stories of loss, discovery, and redemption. Nicole and Caleb's relationship deepened through their shared mission of helping others. Their love, tested by revelation and trauma, emerged stronger for having survived the truth. They became living proof that family could be both chosen and destined. The most profound redemption came in the way they redefined family. Blood ties, chosen bonds, adoptive relationships all became equally valid, equally precious in their expanded understanding of what made a family real. "Mum knew this would happen," Amanda said one evening, watching their extended family gather for dinner. "She knew that by forcing us to face the truth, she'd give us the chance to build something stronger than what was taken from us." The redemption they found wasn't just personal, it rippled outward, touching countless lives affected by Project Legacy. Each family reunited, each truth revealed, each wound healed, became part of a larger story of recovery and renewal. What they were beginning to understand was that redemption wasn't a destination but a journey, one that would continue to shape their lives and relationships in ways they were only starting to comprehend. Justice came not in a single moment but in waves, each revelation from Sarah's files bringing new arrests, new confessions, new steps toward accountability. The federal prosecution team, armed with decades of evidence, began methodically dismantling what remained of Project Legacy's power structure. Richard Hart's trial became the centerpiece of the prosecution. Nicole, discovering her strength in the truth of her origins, took the stand to testify against the man who had claimed to be her father. "He didn't just steal children," she told the packed courtroom. "He stole our choices, our identities, our very understanding of who we were meant to be." The evidence Sarah had gathered proved devastating. Financial records showed billions flowing through offshore accounts. Medical documents revealed the systematic separation of families. Internal communications exposed the cold calculation behind each placement, each engineered life. Dr. Henderson broke under questioning, revealing the hospital board's deep involvement. His testimony implicated dozens of prominent figures, from judges who had approved questionable adoptions to politicians who had protected the program in exchange for favors. Detective Cooper's trial exposed the extent of law enforcement corruption. Other officers, themselves products of the program, came forward to confess their roles. The police department underwent a complete overhaul, with new oversight measures implemented to prevent future infiltration. Adam's testimony about Catherine's death proved crucial in establishing the program's willingness to eliminate threats. The pattern of suspicious deaths surrounding the hospital led to multiple murder investigations, bringing justice to families who had spent years believing they had lost loved ones to natural causes. The judge who had adopted Grace used his position to advocate for systemic change. His powerful statement before the Senate Judiciary Committee led to new legislation protecting families from predatory adoption practices. "We must ensure," he declared, "that no other family suffers the manipulation and pain we experienced." International courts became involved as the program's global reach came to light. Similar operations in other countries were exposed, leading to a coordinated worldwide effort to protect vulnerable families from exploitation. Amanda's medical expertise helped prosecutors understand the technical aspects of the program's operations. Her testimony about the genetic screening process, the targeted selection of mothers, and the medical manipulation of records proved crucial in securing convictions. The mansion became a command center for the justice effort. Legal teams worked alongside investigators, piecing together decades of criminal activity. Witnesses found safety within its walls, their testimony protected by Caleb's security measures. But perhaps the most profound justice came in the form of reunions. Families torn apart by the program found each other again, their connections restored through Sarah's careful documentation. Each reunion represented a small victory against the system that had tried to engineer their lives. Sarah's role received posthumous recognition. The Justice Department acknowledged her 2-decade-long undercover work, praising her sacrifice and dedication. Her name, once associated with the program's crimes, became synonymous with its downfall. Financial justice followed the criminal proceedings. A massive compensation fund was established, funded by seized assets from program participants. Families affected by the program received support for counseling, medical care, and the costs of reunion. The corporate enablers faced their own reckoning. Companies that had profited from the program's activities found themselves facing massive fines and regulatory oversight. Adam's testimony about business practices helped establish new standards for corporate accountability. Nicole and Caleb's foundation became a model for supporting victims of trafficking and family separation. Their work ensuring justice extended beyond the courtroom into practical support for healing and recovery. As the trials concluded and sentences were handed down, the sense of justice accomplished was tempered by understanding of the work still ahead. The damage done by Project Legacy would take generations to heal fully. Yet in the end, justice served meant more than prison sentences and financial penalties. It meant truth exposed, families reunited, and a future where such systematic exploitation could never happen again. What none of them realized was that this justice, hard-won and complete as it seemed, would lead to one final revelation that would bring their story full circle. 1 year after Sarah's sacrifice, the mansion's grounds transformed for a gathering unlike any before. Families from across the country, all touched by Project Legacy, came together to celebrate both justice and healing. The sprawling lawn filled with laughter, tears, and the sound of connections being forged and restored. Amanda stood at the center of it all, her 3 children playing nearby with their countless new cousins, other children whose lives had been affected by the program. Lucas, Logan, and Grace had grown into bright, loving toddlers, seemingly untouched by the trauma that had marked their early months. Adam, embracing his role as uncle, had thrown himself into organizing this reunion. The corporate titan who once measured success in profit margins now found joy in watching families heal. His relationship with Amanda had evolved into something beautiful, a sibling bond stronger than any romantic connection could have been. Nicole and Caleb, now married, moved through the crowd offering legal advice and support to families still navigating the aftermath of the program's exposure. Their foundation had become a beacon of hope for those seeking to reconnect with lost relatives. The judge and his wife had become integral parts of their extended family. The shared custody arrangement for Grace had evolved into a model for other families affected by the program, showing how love could transcend biological connections. Sarah's presence was felt everywhere. A memorial garden, planted in her honor, bloomed with her favorite flowers. Pictures of her smiled down from displays chronicling the program's exposure and downfall. Her sacrifice had made this day possible. She would have loved this, Amanda said softly, watching a group of children playing near the memorial. All these families together, healing, connecting, it's everything she fought for. The reunion included surprising moments of reconciliation. Some former program staff, those who had helped expose the truth, were cautiously welcomed. Their testimonies had helped bring justice, and now they sought their own healing. Throughout the day, new connections emerged. Siblings separated by the program found each other through shared features or stories. Parents who had been told their children died at birth met grandchildren they never knew existed. Each reunion added another thread to the tapestry of healing. The children proved to be the greatest healers. Unconcerned with the complex history that had brought them together, They formed instant bonds, their laughter a balm to adult hearts still heavy with memories of separation and loss. In the mansion's nursery, now a quiet space for overwhelmed attendees to decompress, Amanda found a moment alone with her siblings. Adam and Nicole joined her, their presence a comfort as they watched the celebration through the window. "Do you think this is what Mom imagined?" Nicole asked, using the term they'd all come to associate with Sarah, when she started gathering evidence all those years ago. Adam's response was thoughtful. "I think she hoped for it. She gave us the tools to find each other, to build something new from what was broken." The reunion continued into evening, lanterns illuminating the grounds as families shared meals, stories, and hopes for the future. Children fell asleep in the arms of newly discovered relatives. Tears of joy replaced tears of loss. What none of them could have known was that this gathering would become an annual tradition, growing larger each year as more families found their way home. The mansion, once a fortress of protection, had become a beacon of healing, its gates always open to those seeking connection and understanding. Sarah's legacy lived on not just in the justice she had achieved, but in the love and healing that flowed through the connections she had made possible. Her children, both biological and chosen, had built something beautiful from the ashes of her sacrifice. The transformation of Adam's mansion from a sanctuary of protection to a home of healing happened gradually. What began as makeshift accommodations for families seeking reunion evolved into a permanent foundation, its gates always open to those affected by Project Legacy. Amanda took charge of the medical aspects, establishing a clinic specializing in trauma recovery and family reunification support. Her gentle approach, combined with her personal experience, made her uniquely qualified to help others navigate the complex emotions of reconnection. "Every family story is different," she would explain to new arrivals, "but the path to healing is something we can walk together." The twins and Grace thrived in this environment of constant growth and change. They became unofficial welcomers to other children, their natural empathy helping newcomers feel at home. Their ability to move seamlessly between their two families, spending time with both Amanda and the judge's family, became a model for other shared custody arrangements. Adam redirected his business acumen toward expansion and sustainability. The foundation grew to include multiple properties, each serving different needs in the healing process. His corporate expertise, once used to build wealth, now built networks of support and recovery. Nicole and Caleb's marriage coincided with the opening of the foundation's Legal Advocacy Center. Their wedding, held in Sarah's memorial garden, symbolized the blend of personal happiness and professional purpose they'd found in their work. The judge and his wife became key allies in changing adoption laws, their experience lending weight to legislative reforms. Their commitment to transparency and ethical practices helped restore faith in the adoption system.
The mansion staff, many of whom had stayed through the darkest days of their fight, embraced their expanded roles. The chef, who had once prepared meals for a handful, now ran culinary therapy programs. Security personnel trained in trauma-informed practices, understanding that safety meant more than physical protection.
Each new family brought fresh perspective to their healing community. Some stayed briefly, finding the support they needed to move forward. Others became permanent parts of their extended family, contributing their own skills and experiences to the foundation's work. The children's wing of the mansion buzzed with activity and laughter. Play therapy sessions mixed with ordinary childhood fun, creating an environment where healing happened naturally through connection and joy. Amanda, Adam, and Nicole's sibling relationship deepened as they worked together. Their shared history as Project Legacy's first separated family gave them unique insight into the needs of those they helped. "We're not just helping them heal," Nicole observed one evening, watching new families settle in. "We're giving them what Mom gave us, the chance to choose their own path, to build their own definition of family." The foundation's success attracted attention from similar organizations worldwide. Their model of comprehensive support combining medical care, legal advocacy, and emotional healing became a blueprint for others working with separated families. Regular celebrations marked milestones in their community's growth. Birthdays, reunions, and holidays became opportunities for strengthening bonds and creating new traditions. The pain of the past didn't disappear, but it was gradually overshadowed by the joy of new connections. Sarah's presence remained strong in their work. Her picture hung in the foundation's main hall, her story shared with each new family as inspiration and hope. Her vision of healing and justice continued through the lives touched by her children's work. The new beginning they created wasn't just about healing past wounds, it was about preventing future ones. Their advocacy work, combined with practical support for vulnerable families, helped ensure that no other organization could repeat Project Legacy's crimes. As their community grew, so did their understanding of family's true meaning. Blood ties, chosen bonds, shared experiences all became equally valid parts of their expanding definition of connection and belonging. The deepest healing began in small moments: a child's first smile at a newly discovered grandparent, siblings separated for decades finishing each other's sentences, parents finding peace in understanding the truth about their adopted children's origins. Amanda's own journey toward healing crystallized one morning as she watched her 3 children playing in Sarah's memorial garden. The pain of her mother's loss remained, but it had transformed into something that gave her strength rather than weakness. Mum knew, she told Adam during one of their quiet evening talks. She knew that real healing would come not just from exposing the truth, but from what we built afterward. The healing process touched everyone differently. For Adam, it came through redirecting his protective instincts from just his immediate family to all those seeking refuge in their foundation. His business skills, once used to build walls, now created bridges between separated families. Nicole found healing in helping others navigate the legal complexities of reunion. Each family she helped reconnect eased the burden of her own complicated heritage. Her father's crimes, once a source of shame, became motivation for positive change. Caleb's healing manifested in his ability to trust again after Cooper's betrayal. His marriage to Nicole, his role as uncle to the children, and his work protecting other families restored his faith in human connection. The children demonstrated the most natural healing abilities. Lucas, Logan, and Grace grew up understanding family as something fluid and expansive, their acceptance of new connections teaching the adults around them valuable lessons about forgiveness. They don't see the boundaries we do, Amanda observed, watching the children welcome newcomers. To them, family is simply about love, not blood or background. Forgiveness proved more challenging than healing for many. The judge and his wife struggled with guilt over their unknowing role in Project Legacy, finally finding peace in their dedication to preventing similar exploitation. Former program staff who had helped expose the truth sought forgiveness through service, working within the foundation to help repair the damage they had contributed to. Their insight proved valuable in understanding and dismantling similar operations worldwide. The mansion itself seemed to participate in the healing process. Rooms that had once echoed with fear and tension now resonated with laughter and hope. The security measures remained, but they protected joy rather than guarded against threats. Sarah's memory evolved from a source of grief to inspiration. Her choices to adopt Amanda, to gather evidence, to sacrifice herself for truth became touchstones for understanding the cost and value of moral courage. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, Nicole would explain during foundation workshops. It means choosing to build something new from the ashes of what was destroyed. The healing extended beyond individuals to institutions. The hospital, under new leadership, established ethical guidelines and transparency measures. The adoption system underwent reform, prioritizing family preservation and honest documentation. Regular healing circles brought together different groups affected by the program: birth parents, adoptive families, separated siblings. These sessions, initially painful, became crucial spaces for understanding and forgiveness. The Foundation's approach to healing emphasized choice and autonomy. No one was pressured to forgive or reconnect before they were ready. Each person's journey was respected and supported at their own pace. The annual remembrance ceremonies honored both the pain of separation and the joy of reunion. These events, centered around Sarah's memorial garden, celebrated healing while acknowledging the ongoing nature of recovery. As their community grew, the ripple effects of healing touched more lives. Each restored family became a source of hope and support for others beginning their journey toward wholeness. What emerged was a new understanding of healing not as a destination but as an ongoing process, with forgiveness as its companion rather than its goal. Their shared experiences created a tapestry of recovery, each thread strengthening the whole. 5 years after Sarah's sacrifice, Amanda stood in her mother's memorial garden, watching the sun set over a transformed landscape. The mansion grounds, once a fortress against danger, had become a haven of healing for hundreds of families affected by Project Legacy. The children Lucas, Logan, and Grace played nearby, their laughter mixing with that of other children who had found sanctuary here. At 7 years old, they were growing into remarkable individuals, each carrying a piece of Sarah's legacy in their own way. "They have her spirit," Adam observed, joining his sister in the garden. Their sibling bond, discovered through tragedy, had deepened into something precious and unshakable. That same determination to make things right. Nicole and Caleb approached, hand in hand, their wedding rings catching the evening light. Their marriage had become a symbol of hope, proof that love could flourish even in the aftermath of betrayal and loss. The foundation just approved 10 new families for the reunion program, Nicole reported, her legal expertise now fully dedicated to helping others find their way home. Each story different, but all connected by the truth Mom helped expose. The judge and his wife, now regular visitors, had become integral parts of their extended family. Their shared custody arrangement for Grace had evolved into a model of cooperation and understanding, showing others that love could transcend traditional family boundaries. "Sarah would be proud," the judge's wife said softly, watching Grace play with her brothers. "Not just of what you've built, but of how you've built it with compassion, understanding, and hope." The Foundation's work had expanded beyond their initial mission. Beyond reuniting families and providing legal support, they now work to prevent similar exploitation worldwide. Their model of comprehensive care and advocacy had been adopted by organizations across the globe. Amanda's medical clinic had become a center for trauma recovery and healing. Her understanding of both the physical and emotional aspects of family separation made her uniquely qualified to help others navigate their own journeys of recovery. "Sometimes I think this was Mom's plan all along," Amanda reflected. "Not just to expose the truth, but to create something new from the ashes, a place where healing isn't just possible, it's inevitable." The mansion itself stood as testament to their journey. Security measures remained, but now protected joy rather than guarded against threats. The once formal rooms had softened with children's laughter, family gatherings, and the warm chaos of healing hearts. Each year, more families found their way to them. Some stayed briefly, finding the support they needed to move forward. Others became permanent parts of their community, contributing their own stories and strength to the Foundation's mission. "We're not just helping them heal," Caleb observed, watching new arrivals being welcomed. "We're showing them that family can be both chosen and destined, that love doesn't follow rules or boundaries." The sun's final rays illuminated Sarah's memorial plaque, the words she had chosen years ago taking on new meaning. "Truth reveals, love heals, family endures." Her sacrifice had sparked a movement of healing that continued to grow and evolve. As darkness fell, lanterns throughout the garden flickered to life. A tradition started in remembrance of that rainy night when Amanda first sought refuge with her twins. Each light represented a family reunited, a truth uncovered, a heart healed. Looking at her extended family, siblings found through tragedy, children thriving despite early trauma, friends become family through shared purpose, Amanda finally understood the full scope of her mother's vision. She knew, Amanda said, tears gathering as she smiled at her gathered loved ones. She knew that exposing the truth wasn't enough. We had to build something new, something better, and we have. The night wrapped around them like a gentle embrace as stars appeared above. In the distance, the city lights twinkled, no longer threatening but promising each light perhaps another family finding their way to truth, to healing, to home. The legacy of Project Legacy had been transformed. What began as a story of separation and loss had become one of reunion and hope. In the end, their greatest victory wasn't just in exposing the truth or achieving justice, it was in proving that love, in all its forms, could heal even the deepest wounds. As the family gathered for their evening meal, surrounded by the community they had built, Sarah's presence felt close, her dream of healing and wholeness realized in ways she might never have imagined, but had always hoped possible. If this story of love, sacrifice, and redemption has touched your heart, we invite you to join our storytelling family. Your support means everything to us. Please take a moment to subscribe to our channel, share your thoughts in the comments below, and spread this message of hope with your loved ones. Every like, every share, every comment helps us continue creating meaningful stories that explore the depths of human connection and resilience. Together we can build a community where stories like these reach those who need them most. Thank you for being part of our journey.